afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. If you will please take your seats. I want to welcome you to the October 26th City Commission meeting here in City Chambers. And this is a very special day indeed. But first and foremost, to everyone out in Rattler Nation, happy homecoming week. What a great week to be in Tallahassee. And we're going to do some celebrating here as well. Ladies and gentlemen, we have our regularly scheduled City Commission meeting at 3 o'clock, followed by a public hearing at 6 o'clock. We will take as much time, colleagues, as we need to make sure we take care of the business of the City of Tallahassee. At this time, it is my distinct pleasure to introduce Father Jerome Maximus of St. Mary and St. George Coptic Orthodox Church, who I had the opportunity to visit with not too long ago, who is here to provide the invocation. Father, thank you so much. If you'll please rise for the invocation.
Thank you, Mayor Daly. Let us pray. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit, one God, amen. Almighty God and Creator of all, you are the Father of all people. I pray, O Lord, bless our city of Tallahassee. Guide our leaders and your people in the ways of justice and peace. Protect us from the evils of injustice, prejudice, exploitation, conflict, and wars of the enemy. Help us to put away mistrust, bitterness, and hatred. Lead us to find peace, respect, and freedom. Unite us in the making and sharing of tools of peace against ignorance, poverty, disease, and oppression. Grant that we may grow in harmony as brothers and sisters created in your image. My Lord Jesus Christ, my God, you have said, apart from me, you can do nothing. In faith, we embrace your words, Lord, and we entreat your goodness. Help your people in leadership to carry out the work they are about to begin, and to bring it to completion and fruition for the glory of your holy name. To you I give glory, O Father, and Son, and Holy Spirit, one God. Amen.
Amen. Amen. Ladies and join me, ladies and gentlemen, in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Once again, let me welcome everyone to the City Commission meeting. And as we start all of our meetings, let me remind you of our civility pledge. And let's please all work as hard as we possibly can to set the example not only in chambers, but for everyone that is watching the City of Tallahassee Commission meeting today on how good government is actually operated. Mr. Manager, do we have any agenda modifications, sir?
No, sir, we do not.
Excellent. Today is a very special day, and there are many of us that are here in chambers today to honor a very special man. Mr. Joe Bullard, will you please come join me? I would also like to ask all of my colleagues to please come join me. We are honored today with the presence of the Chairman of Leon County Commission. Mr. Chairman, Bill Proctor, will you please come join us? And President Dr. Larry Robinson, the President of FAMU, will you please come join us as well? You know what, Joe? Why don't you real quick introduce your family and ask them to come join us as well.
Please, my daughter Janelle, my grandson Donovan.
Donovan. All right. Before we start with the official ceremony, I know that you have a lot of friends that would like to provide comments. And I would like to ask the Chairman of the Leon County Commission, Mr. Bill Proctor, to set the tone to get us started. If you wouldn't mind representing Leon County, please, Chairman Proctor, with your comments, sir. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, honorable commissioners, Mr. Mayor of this great City Commission. Joe Bullard, we're here because the county shares with the city government our opened hearts to this icon of our community. We would have had our resolution, but what I found is that the city oftentimes mimics verbatim what the county writes on ours. So So, Mr. Bullard, I didn't, knowing how the city is, I didn't try to do, but I jot down and I'm gonna see if they got this right here. Ladies and gentlemen, real quickly, I just wanna say that there are three things that come to mind quickly, what you do not want to occur. The first one is that you don't want Joe Bullard to call you out in primetime radio. And you've heard it said that I'm gonna call Joe Bullard and I'm gonna let Joe Bullard know about this, that, and Joe Bullard gonna tell it. The second thing in this community that you don't want Joe, and that is for Joe to be the opposing announcer when your band leaves the field. That's not a good experience for either your band or, in particular, your majorettes. Thirdly, you don't want Joe to get angry. I don't know if you've ever seen Joe upset. That's not a good experience to witness. But then there are three things that you do want that I believe that over time, time bears witness. You do want Joe Bullard to be the voice for your commercial. You want him to be the voice for your political commercial. Anything that you're lifting up for a community, you want his voice. And indeed, it seems that only Mr. Roy Moore has an exclusive to his voice. Look out, Piggly Wiggly. You do want, secondly, you do want Joe to MC your event. There's nothing like saying the MC of this event will be Joe Bullard. Okay, Joe Bullard, oh yeah, okay. And then thirdly, you do want Joe Bullard to hurry up and to ride, no offense to Vaughn, no offense to Vaughn, but you want Joe to hurry up to the moon on homecoming Friday night so the party can get started properly. And when he says, hello, Tallahassee, you know the party's on. Joe, we love you. A lot more words to come today. I thank the mayor for allowing the county to share in this moment of shine. And you've brought to all of us joy, happiness, and much shine. May God bless you and your family. God bless you.
Ladies and gentlemen, the president of Florida A&M University, Dr. Larry Robinson.
Yeah, thank you. Did you say go to? Oh, yeah. No. Mr. Mayor, members of the Tallahassee City Commission, thank you very much for giving me an opportunity to say just a few words about this gentleman to my left. The only thing that's wrong with this sign that's up here now is that it doesn't say the almighty Joe Bullard, right? Y'all got to get that straight because this is the almighty Joe Bullard. You know, Florida A&M University celebrated 135 years on the 3rd of this month. If you didn't know any better, you would think Joe Bullard has been there all 135 of those years because his impact on the university is just that great, right? I mean, Commissioner Proctor, I've seen some of those situations where bands have decided never to come back to Bragg Memorial Stadium after hearing Joe Bullard. I heard him one time tell a band that had a synthesizer at a game once. He said, y'all need to get in a requisition for an extension cord because y'all cannot compete with the Marching 100. I don't know about the hair, but I ain't going there. Try not to be personal. But Joe Bullard, you know, not only the voice of, you know, the radio station here, the most highly listened to radio station here, number one. No doubt about that. But he's also the voice of the Marching 100. And we have here in this room the director of bands, Dr. Shelby Chapman, to attest to that. You know, come on up here. I remember, you know, 25 some odd years ago, for me, when I got to see the 100 perform at the Florida Classic in Orlando. And if you haven't been there, you need to go. I'm sorry about homecoming because it's sold out already. Can't do nothing about that. You can go and see us at the Classic, though. And I heard we invited my in-laws there, Sharon's mother and father, and as the 100 came out onto the field, she asked me, she said, Larry, is every student at FAMU in the band, right? But Joe put on a show that day, and, it stuck with me forever. I said, I would never, and Commissioner Proctor, you're right, want to follow the 100, or even worse, go before them. It doesn't matter, right? It's a bad situation because we have the nation's best music ensemble here at Florida A&M University. And Joe, you have let the world know that, right? And so I just can't tell you how much I appreciate the great work that you do to help elevate FAMU. And I know that I show my appreciation to you because I pay you. But anyway. And I pay you. I also want to recognize, we do have the president, the real president, right? My job is simple. My job is to make sure that I get more alumni into the world. So we have the president of the National Alumni Association here, city commissioner, right, from another city, Mr. Curtis Johnson. And thank you, sir, and all those other rattlers who are coming back to Tallahassee. And we're going to hear from Joe this week. I don't know if Arkansas Pine Bluff is bringing his band. I kind of doubt it, right? I doubt it, and I pray that they don't, because it'll be embarrassing. Joe, thank you so much. You have made a tremendous difference in the history of Florida A&M University. It would always be there. Your name is already in the history books. Thank you so much, sir.
Oh, God is good, isn't he, everybody? Let me first of all say, Mr. Joe Bullard, Mayor, and everybody assembled here, I want to say it was about maybe 8 years ago, one of our presidents had to write a letter. Mr. Joe Bullard. It was a good thing in a lot of instances. But I do want to say, Joe, that I don't even know how to start by acknowledging you for when you always start that halftime show out. And I know everybody in here assembled, you know the words and doing pregame. Say it with me. Ladies and gentlemen, the Florida A&M University Marching Band. I've tried at rehearsals to state it. The band never responds to me when I say it. It's something about the dialect of his voice, and it resonates with all of us in our respective communities. We were riding to Atlanta for the Falcons game 2 weeks ago, and we were talking about the script. See, everybody else has told you all the great things, but sometimes Joe doesn't follow the script. He didn't follow the script with Dr. Foster sometimes, with Dr. White, with Dr. Young, and certainly not me. So when we sit on the front of our bus, we're talking about the script, talking about life, et cetera, and he sits on the west side, and Lieutenant Alexander and I sit on the east side. And we just have a royal great time just talking about life and talking about Joe and what he provides to this community and beyond this community as he goes to Orlando, Miami, Washington, D.C., just all over the country. And that takes a special person. Everybody doesn't have that gift. We all are gifted within our own rights, but there's something about Joe and that gift. And I know it started many years ago in Jacksonville and in Orlando during his home wearing, and his mother, of course, passing early in life for him and staying with his sister, and that nurturing aspect that they believed in and how he carries that forth even in the absence of Carolyn, who I know is smiling down right now, and of course, Janelle and Mr. Donovan. Everybody knows Dr. D. Joe, I just want to say we're just so humbly and eternally grateful to you. I think you started in 1974 with that audition for Dr. Foster. 1 year you were out because of Cumulus Radio, I think, and they tried somebody. I was down in Miami at the time, and that didn't quite work out from what I understand, the message that I got. And so your voice, your presence, your devotion to this community, and of course, your camaraderie with the students. Because I have to tell you, Joe mentors the current students just like they're his very own. You don't see that aspect of Joe Bullard as he interacts with the current students of the Marching 100. I'm sure other sports teams and others that he interacts with when he flies around the country with them. But certainly, I'm grateful to you as a friend, as a colleague. You know, there's nothing I wouldn't do for you, and I'm sure anybody else that's in this room wouldn't do for you, because you are who you are, and you are very unique, sir. And we thank you, we love you, and we bless you in all of everybody's name. Thank you so much, Joe Bullard.
Thank you. I know all my colleagues would like to provide some brief comments as well. Commissioner Porter, we'll start with you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll just say, you know, I don't know you very well, but I think that you don't have to know someone very well or even know them personally to know about their character and the impact that they've made. And that your being honored today has brought out the people that it has brought out, says a lot about you. And I hope one day that I can have the impact that you've had on this community. So thank you for being here, and certainly the recognition is well deserved.
Commissioner Williams-Cox.
In all the world. In all the world. 2 words. Joe Bullard. When you hear those words, you just get ready, because whatever's going to happen is about to happen. And I am so proud and so pleased to have been a part of just hearing those words and being at Florida A&M as a student and now as an alumnus. But I also know Joe, the church member. You know, that is, I know that is a source of his strength. And his beautiful wife, the usher at Bethel Missionary Baptist Church, with the beautiful smile, the beautiful hat. Janelle, you wearing hats yet? Okay. You have to learn to wear those hats, or Donna's gonna have to find a wife to wear them hats. But I know that she is smiling down from heaven, because all she ever wanted in our conversation was to make sure that her family was whole and her family was good. And you did just what you needed to do that. Now, when Janelle was a little girl, I taught her in Sunday school a time or two, and I thought that she looked like you. But as she has grown older, she's looking like Carolyn. So I don't know how y'all did that. But I'm just glad that you all are here in our community. Thank you for what you do for Florida A&M. And let me just say, not just Florida A&M, when you hear Joe Bullard's voice anywhere, I've had Joe Bullard's voice in an Alpha Kappa Alpha sorority conference in between Florida, Georgia, and South Carolina, and everybody knew who that voice was, because he probably said something bad about their band, and they remembered. But in all the world, 2 words, Joe Bullard. Thank you so much for what you're doing in our community, who you are to our community, and who you are to this future. You're training them up right. This is going to be the next Joe Bullard right here, the village voice. God bless you.
Commissioner Matlow.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. My wife doesn't let me do impersonation, so I'm not even going to try. But I do want to thank Chairman Proctor for letting us do the heavy lifting on this event over here at City Hall. I would just say, you know, I grew up in Tallahassee, lived here all my life. If you didn't know Joe Bullard, you knew the name. It's just such an iconic figure in our community, and to be on the City Commission when we get to honor you today, it's just absolutely a privilege. Thank you.
The Mayor Pro Tem, the Dean of the City Commission, Curtis Richardson.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Mayor, and everyone who's here this afternoon. This is a very special occasion, Joe. We were all anticipating this and looking forward to it because it is a well-deserved recognition and honor. And Joe and I go back a long ways. I think we came to Tallahassee about the same time, and in the mid-'70s. And it was interesting because when Joe had just gotten notified of his induction into the Black Radio Hall of Fame, we were talking about some of his icons that had been on the radio in Jacksonville. I grew up in a little town called Green Cove Springs, just south of Jacksonville. And Joe was talking about Willie Martin and Johnny Shaw and Ken Knight. See, if y'all grew up in the Jacksonville area, you'd recognize those names. And they were all inducted. And as I was growing up, those are the names we heard on the radio. Ken Knight did the gospel show. And then we both ended up here in Tallahassee, and I am so proud of the fact that not only has Joe been a great friend, he and his family, They have been neighbors. We all live on the south side of Tallahassee and are proud of the neighborhoods that we live in, and we get to see each other from time to time as we are coming and going. And I can tell you, there is no greater family man in this community than Joe Bullard. He loves his daughter. He loves his grandson. If you all hear him on the radio, there is not a day goes by that he does not acknowledge, excuse me, that he does not acknowledge his late wife, Carolyn. And Joe, we appreciate you for that. He loves Donovan. Donovan, you have a wonderful grandfather. You want to be like him when you grow up, right? And our families intersect because we are also members of Jack and Jill of America, which is a Black family organization here in town. And so we get to, my wife gets to see Janelle at those meetings. But we are so proud, Joe, of what you have given to this community. You've made a tremendous difference in this community through your presence and certainly through your voice. And we appreciate you, and we ask God to continue to bless you and your family, and you to continue to bless this community with all that you contribute. Thank you so much, and congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you.
Joseph Joe Bullard was born in Jacksonville, Florida in 1953 and was the fourth child of 6 siblings. In high school, Joe began working on the weekends at local radio station WTLN and WOKB. After graduating in 1972, Joe entered FAMU to pursue a degree in sociology with a minor in criminology. His first big break in radio came when he joined Tallahassee's WTAL radio station in 1973. He went on to join the staff of WANM, serving as program director from 1974 to 1988. His accomplishments at WANM were innumerable, and the lives that he touched were many and varied. In 1975, Joe became the voice of the incomparable Marching 100 and a Tallahassee institution. In 1988, Joe left radio and joined the Columbia Records Sony Music team as its promotional manager for Florida and Alabama, earning recognition as Promotional Manager of the Year. In 1998, after 10 years away from radio, he first aired Joe's Jukebox on Tallahassee's #1 station, WHBX 96.1 Jams. Yearly ratings show that no other local station has been able to claim the official title of #1 up against Joe's Jukebox. In 2003, Joe returned to Tallahassee and began doing what he loved most. He now serves as WHBX program director and is on the air daily from 10 a.m. to 3 p.m. His Jukebox still airs on Sundays. But ladies and gentlemen, his iconic voice has been a staple on Tallahassee radio stations for over 30 years. Joe volunteers his time and talent by using his broadcasting skills to support many nonprofit organizations. Many families, sororities, and fraternities annually enjoy his entertainment at their functions, where each year is always better than the last. His love for his alma mater, FAMU, can be felt throughout the entire community, as he is officially recognized as the voice of the Florida A&M Marching 100. Joe Bullard always reminds us that tough times don't necessarily laugh, but tough people do. And that God never meant for us to face those tough times alone, and that's why he gave us each other. Joe has been known for saying, "Take it from me, worry about nothing, pray about anything, and thank the man above for everything." Ladies and gentlemen, on Sunday, October 2nd, 2022, in St. Louis, Missouri, Mr. Joe Bullard was inducted into the National Black Radio Hall of Fame, and as such is recognized as one of the nation's best in the business in the United States of America. Now, as mayor of the city of Tallahassee, I have the sole discretion of bestowing the highest award given to citizens who not only represent our wonderful city to the best of their ability, but who serves as the example of who we are to the core of our community. Ladies and gentlemen, will you please stand? I, John E. Daly, as the mayor of Tallahassee, do hereby present Mr. Joe Bullard the key to the City of Tallahassee for outstanding service, dated today, October 26, 2022. Joe, thank you and congratulations.
Donovan's impressed.
Now, Donovan, I'm going to let you hold these for your grandfather too, but we also would like to present you with a pair of City of Tallahassee official cufflinks. Mr. Bullard.
By now, you know I love you. Not because of who you are, but because of who I am whenever I'm with you. Knowing that tough times don't last, but tough people do. God never meant for us to face those tough times alone. That's why he gave us each other. For my family and all of my friends that I see here, Shelby slipped out, but he had all the excuses in the world of why he wouldn't be here today, Mr. President. And he showed up here. But when I look around this room, I know that my heart is in the room with all of my friends who have been with me from the beginning. We go back to WANM. I saw Cora earlier. Cora's in the back. GT. Gerald Tooks. It was back in the day and we didn't know what money was. We just wanted to be on the radio. And there again, I go back and I have to say the words of James Ford, being the first black mayor of Tallahassee. He was a station manager for WANM and working at TAL on the bumper patrol, riding through Frenchtown. If you would see a bumper that had TAL on it, you could call the license tag and the radio station would put me on the air. But when I got in Frenchtown, it was technical difficulties. But when I saw them painting the head on the van, I thought it was Freddie Grooms. It was a big afro. But I went in and I saw Mr. Ford. And he said, I don't have no money, but you'll never be hungry. Won't have to look for a place to stay or to put gas in your car. The rest is history. Through the years, I see Gail Andrews there, Miss TV, and together we did that. We think back to Super X. How many remember that? Super X Food Market. Yeah. And when you mention about Roy Moore Piggly Wiggly, that's the new Super X. You can't get away from it. And some people tell lies. They come from Washington when they call you. But I won't say that. But again, I want to thank everyone in here. My old neighbor back there, how you doing, girl? And there again, J. Gaither Park since 1980. My daughter, the beat of my heart. My grandson, the beat of my heart. Together we are. We're one. And again, from my heart to yours, thank you. We're going to try it out.
Can we get some pictures real quick? Okay. Let's bring the family up. Will you all bear with us as we take just a couple of pictures and we'll resume the meeting? Joe, why don't we move right over? Good. Thank you, thank you. Hey, Joe.
It's always touching when Joe mentions his wife on never misses a day. Yeah, that's how he starts every single one of his shows.
Well, colleagues, what a wonderful way to start off the meeting today. I would like to recognize Commissioner Diane Williams-Cox for special recognition.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I wanted to recognize my colleague from Fort Pierce, City Commissioner Curtis Johnson. He is also, as you heard earlier, he's also the president of the National Alumni Association of Florida A&M University. But I wanted the opportunity for you to just greet us if you like. He came in from Fort Pierce, and we're colleagues on the Florida League of Cities together. Yes. And so I just wanted to recognize you. So when I come to Fort Pierce,
absolutely,
to your meeting, no, I'm just messing with you.
Commissioner, welcome to our chamber. How's it feel to be on that side of the dais?
It's very interesting to be on this side.
Yes, sir.
I'm also understanding what goes on that side.
Yes, sir.
So, on behalf of our Honorable Mayor Linda Hudson and the entire City Commission of the City of Fort Pierce, I bring you greetings from the city that just held the first gubernatorial debate. So we were delighted to have that in downtown Fort Pierce. We hope that you were able to ascertain the information you were looking for. Sometimes it seemed a little noisy on TV. Trust me, it was noisy inside the arena as well. But we're just honored to have that in Fort Pierce. And I'm always honored to be here to salute my fellow commissioners and the work that we do for our community. So God bless you, Godspeed, and continue to do the work that we all love to do for our citizens. Thank you so much for having me.
Commissioner, thank you so much for what you do on behalf of the National Alumni Association as well. Welcome home.
Thank you. Thank
Anything
you.
we can do to make your stay enjoyable, let us know.
Let's go Rattlers.
Yes, sir. Yeah. Yes, sir. Thank you, Commissioner Williams-Cox. Mr. Manager, do we have any announcements?
No, sir.
Okay, appearances by city commission appointed boards, committees, and other governmental entities. We are on 7.01, the city commission sinking fund commission. Excuse me. I'm going to turn it over to you, Mr. Clerk.
Thank you, Mayor. This item does call for the City Commission to adjourn and reconvene as the Sinking Fund Commission, which for the public's benefit and reminder consists of our 5 elected officials and 3 citizen members who also, in addition to serving in this role, serve as our Investment Advisory Committee. And so if at this
Let's go ahead and do so. Why don't you say it? So I'm going to adjourn the City Commission meeting. I'm going to call to order the Sinking Fund Commission and invite our other members of the Sinking Fund. Please come join us as well.
Thank you, Mayor. As they come forward, I will introduce for your benefit, and again, those in the public, Bill Christiansen and William McLeod are here with us today as members of our Sinking Fund Commission and Advisory Committee. Our 3rd committee member is Seth Clark. Mr. Clark had a business appointment, which we knew about when we scheduled the meeting, but we did want to go ahead and bring the item forward, and we look forward to seeing him in future meetings.
Explain the changes.
The item before you considers City of Tallahassee City Commission Policy 236, which provides guidance to me and staff on the investments made by our pension plan. Every 3 to 5 years, our Investment Advisory Committee, staff, and investment consultant take a look at our investments for our pension plan to determine the appropriate places to invest as far as investment mixes, likely returns, and related risk. So this year, actually in March, we began working with our consultant, Siegel Marco. I went through a number of iterations and models to determine what would be best. Siegel Marco is not recommending any major changes or new asset classes to what we've previously had, but is recommending small changes in the targets for the existing classes, as well as changing the ranges slightly for those classes. Staff believes that those will benefit us by maximizing our return at an appropriate level of risk, and that really is kind of the guideline. We want to achieve the best return we can, but also not take excess risk, and so we believe this mix is appropriate. It was discussed with the Investment Advisory Committee first on May 19th, and we've subsequently had these three members approve the recommendations as that advisory committee, but because this is the policy that guides us at a very high level, it does come to this body as the Sinking Fund Commission. So we recommend approval of the changes, which are detailed in the agenda item attachments, and also want to make sure that you are aware it's option 1 is those changes, and option 2 is specific to our private equity. Our range, as recommended, goes to 15%. We're at 15.9%, and we have discussed that for a number of years in that committee. Just great performance has gotten us there, so we want to let time take care of it and get it back into range rather than being a forced seller. So options 1 and 2 are recommended.
Excellent. Do we have any public comment on this item, Mr. Clerk?
Mayor, we have no public comment.
Okay, let me start off by saying, gentlemen, thank you so much for your service. This is a very technical committee that you bring expertise to the table, and we appreciate it due to the hard work that you do. And in our support staff, the city is financially sound. We're moving forward, and thank you. Thank you. Open it up for any questions, direction.
Move option
1 and 2.
1 and 2, yes, sir.
Second.
Okay, the Mayor Pro Tem has properly moved options number 1 and 2, seconded by Commissioner Diane Williams-Cox. Any further discussion? Gentlemen, any comment? You good? Excellent. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes 7-0. Do we have any other items to come before us as the Sinking Fund Commission?
No, sir.
Okay. Gentlemen, thank you very much. Certainly do appreciate it. I will go ahead and adjourn the Sinking Fund Commission, and we are now back in as the City Commission. It's 3:37. We are on the consent agenda. Give everybody a second to. All right, Mr. Manager, have any of the consent items been pulled off the consent agenda?
No, sir.
Mr. Clerk, do we have any public comment on the consent agenda?
Give me 1 second, Mayor. No, sir, we do not.
Okay, no items have been pulled off consent. We have no public comment.
Move acceptance of consent agenda.
Okay, it's been properly moved by Commissioner Diane Williams-Cox, seconded by the Mayor Pro Tem. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Passes unanimously, 5-0. We are on item number 10.01, the Joint City-County Bicycling Working Group appointment. Mr. Clerk?
Yes, sir. Mayor and Commissioners, the purpose of this item is to fill one of the vacant City Commission spots on the Joint City-County Bicycling Work Groups. As you're aware, both the city and the county have positions on that work group. At this time, Anne Marie Shakti is the applicant and is being recommended for commission approval from the city side.
Excellent. Do we have any public comment on this item?
We do not.
Okay, colleagues?
Move acceptance of the recommendation for appointment.
Okay, it's been properly moved by Commissioner Williams-Cox,
Second.
seconded by the Mayor Pro Tem. Any further comment? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Passes unanimously, 5-0. Do we have any introduction of ordinances this evening, Madam Attorney?
No, we do not. Thank you.
We are on policy formation and direction, item number 12.01. Mr. Manager.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is an item regarding our airport, the international airport status, and ultimately the creation of a foreign trade zone. David Pollard, our director of the airport, will provide a short presentation. And this is really along the journey, the path that for the last number of years, staff and the city, we worked extensively with the U.S. Customs and Border Protection Agency to develop a course of action to establish the airport as an international port of entry and ultimately a foreign trade zone. This is the next step in that journey. And if I could ask David to come forward and give us an overview of what that means and what the steps look like.
David, good to see you, sir.
Thank you, Mayor, Commissioners, appointed officials. Thank you for hearing this today. With respect to the foreign trade zone, I continue to stay centered on our strategic priorities as we have set those out. Back when we developed the city strategic plan, I personally believe we selected some great strategic priorities to really move us forward. And I think this item alone and by itself is a true game changer for our airport, our community and the entire Northwest Florida region. Foreign trade zone benefits, just very briefly, a quick overview for you. Utilization of a foreign trade zone affords many significant economic benefits to U.S.-based firms, reduces costs, duty exemptions, tariffs, and various fees that come along with importing goods to the community here. Provides for streamlined logistics and other supply chain efficiencies, and improves the global market competitiveness. We've really been focused on our global posturing as we develop our international facilities. With respect to U.S. foreign trade zones, you'll see they were created by the Foreign Trade Zones Act of 1934. There's currently 193 active foreign trade zones nationwide that employ 460,000 plus people, 3,300 businesses. We get this from, if you look at the bottom there, the National Association of Foreign Trade Zones that we are now a member of and actively participating with them as well. Total imports exceed $767 billion nationwide into Florida, into foreign trade zones. With respect to Florida, those were established initially in the early 70s, and there's 20 active foreign trade zones. There's actually 20 commercial airports within the state of Florida as well, but there's 20 foreign trade zones currently. I'll show you a map of those here in a minute, but they serve hundreds of businesses, facilitating billions in Florida trade activity and thousands of jobs. This also comes from FDOT reports in Enterprise Florida as we work with Enterprise Florida, Visit Florida, and others to continue to really show what we're doing here in Tallahassee in the Northwest Florida region. Through our previous studies and with our consultant, we hired a consultant that does this, has been there and done this on a nationwide basis. They're very experienced, but we had them assemble a report for us back in 2016. IMSW is what they're called, IMS Worldwide, and they have very solid relationships with cargo, freight, logistics, and freight forwarding business. And so that was part of the reason that we selected them, of their partnerships that they have along the way. But you'll see there's this large service gap in between Jacksonville, hoping you can see this on your screen a little bit better, but in between the Jacksonville zone and the Panama City zone. And so conceptually what we're looking to do, and as validated by the independent consultant's report, we're trying to look at the area in between over to our west to Gulf County. We're hoping to include Gulf County, so we touch the port there, as well as over towards the I-75 corridor to the east. So generally, that's the area. We've been advised to initially establish the zone within the state of Florida, and then it's much easier to expand the zone in the future if we seek to look into South Georgia and some of those counties in southern Georgia there. So, initially what we would seek to do is stay within the state of Florida and work it as recommended by our consultant. The airport meets the state of Florida's criteria. There are state statutes. You'll see them on the bottom bullet there, Chapter 288, which establishes our authority or ability to apply to the Foreign Trade Zone Board. That's who would ultimately approve it. Some of you were at our groundbreaking ceremony for the international facility groundbreaking. After that event, I've got to have the buy-in of U.S. Customs and Border Protection. Our area port director from Jacksonville was at that groundbreaking event. She spoke at the groundbreaking event. And as we wrapped up that event, she looked over and gave me the go-ahead to proceed with the Foreign Trade Zone. So the Foreign Trade Zone application would go to the U.S. Foreign Trade Zones Board. They would consider and hopefully approve it once we submit it, but it's got to have the approval of U.S. Customs and Border Protection. That's what I got that day of the groundbreaking. She gave me the nod to go ahead and submit it with their concurrence because they see that we are truly taking action and moving this airport, this community, this region forward, and they're very excited about it. They're very excited when you consider that service gap region between Jacksonville and Panama City. That's where they're currently based. And also, we're going to fill a nice area here with this proposed zone. Support, we've reached out previously. I'll be doing another round of this as we put the application together. Certainly have talked very closely with Ricardo at Danfoss. We've got to have 2 major sponsors to the zone that would commit to doing business with the zone as part of our application. We did receive that. We worked with Appalachia Regional Planning Council, OEV, Career Source Capital Region, and the surrounding counties. We got numerous letters of support and agreement when we did our original report. And so what we would be looking for is to continue this forward momentum with our community and our region. And an independent study conducted by Kimley Horn projected the zone would create 1,664 jobs over the next 10 years. The zone will need an opportunity to mature as we continue forward, and also would generate an economic impact as it matures of $304.7 million by 2034. This just outlines some of the steps and some of the history of some of our previous commission actions that we took. We certainly sought authority originally to pursue the international and foreign trade zone. That was accepted and approved. We did the resolution for the name change. We moved forward with the international facility planning and designing that and the groundbreaking. In 2024, our goal would be to pull together the opening of the foreign trade zone with the international facility concurrently. That would be our goal, and something that I'm certainly shooting for, and staff is working very hard to achieve. This comes straight out of some of our previous agenda items. Back then, we tried to set the course of what the steps would be to get us to full international port of entry with foreign trade zone. And so you'll see our little report card here from the standpoint of we've changed the name, we've done the rebranding and logo changes. We're in progress. I don't want to incur the costs of U.S. Customs until I absolutely need to. We would be called a user fee airport, and so up until the point that we have to have them here, which would be when the facility is complete, would be the approximate start date of U.S. Customs. And again, that coming together with the zone. And the last bullet there, of course, you see is developing that foreign trade zone. So we're working hard and actively working this, and with your concurrence here today, we would anticipate moving forward with this item here in the formal application for the foreign trade zone support.
Thank you. Great presentation. Did I see correctly this projected over 1,600 jobs in the area with an estimated positive economic impact of over $300 million?
Yes, Mayor, that is correct. And that, I might point out, does not include the recent development opportunities that I've brought before you as well. So again, we're tracking towards that strategic goal of a $1 billion economic impact to this community by 2024. So we're working hard.
Excellent. Mr. Clerk, do we have any public comment on this item?
No, sir.
Okay, let's go into questions, direction. Commissioner Porter.
Sure, and I'll make the motion to approve the resolution.
Okay, Commissioner Porter makes a motion for option number 1. Is there a second to the motion?
Second.
Seconded by the Mayor Pro Tem. Commissioner Porter.
Thank you. I think this is really incredible and exciting. I think leveraging geographically where we are in relation to the other FTZs is really critical and strategic. I just had one question, which is what this is going to cost and how we recoup those costs. And I know that oftentimes before us, we, are amazing grant opportunities that we take advantage of. And so I'm just wondering if you could speak a little bit to that.
Yeah, so thank you, Commissioner, for the question. So with respect to cost, this rolls up into our user fee costs associated with the Customs and Border Protection. We're also working on improvements to our air cargo, which is another one of our strategic goals. So the cargo freight logistics space is certainly a true opportunity for us as we continue ahead, especially considering some of the local developments that are out there. So from that standpoint, behind the scenes, we have a separate pro forma. As I mentioned, that memorandum of understanding that we will need to enter with U.S. Customs and Border Protection as we move ahead, we already have those costs planted. We'll have to pay for some of their technology and some other things. We've already captured those costs. We've had them give us a bill of materials of what that's going to cost. So that's all factored in as we get to the tail end of the international facility. But we've got the cost of technology. We've got the cost of the officers themselves, and some built-in overtime, right? Because we want to start with one, give them the latitude to staff up to two, and let it grow and mature, right? But we want to be spot on with respect to our fiscal planning. I've been adamant kind of internally at the airport that I do not want to put this on the backs of the airlines, right? I recently met with about 8 different airlines at a conference I was just at, and that was their number one question, is what is the impact going to be to the airlines? And they were actually surprised when I said 0, right? Because that's how it was designed. I've been working on this since 2014 as part of the initial Imagine Tallahassee and sales tax process as we worked back then. And back then I used to say, if the community wants international, the community must pay, right? And not from the standpoint, it's all coming together with respect to putting the fees on those that are using the services. Right?
Okay, so let me just clarify, or correct me if I'm wrong. So the majority of the cost is just part of other projects that are part of our strategic plan, and the costs that specifically the FTZ incurs are relatively minimal and budgeted and accounted for.
Yes, they're all budgeted. Like I say, we have that pro forma in the background, and we're ready to trigger that just as soon as we sign and execute that memorandum of understanding with Customs and Border Protection and all those other user fees that I had previously discussed.
Okay, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Commissioner Matlow.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Great job, Director. This has been a long time coming, and you've seen it, given us regular updates along the way to see it coming to fruition. It's just a proud moment, and we're proud of you for all the work you put in. I had one question, just out of curiosity. You mentioned 2 commitments already to use it. I was wondering who those were and if there's any other interest that we're talking.
Yeah, and that's why I mentioned I'd want to do a fresh round because we've certainly changed a lot, and just since the study was done previously. So just recently, I was talking with Ricardo at Danfoss, for example. He had people coming in from Denmark, and they had to stop in New York and clear customs and do all this stuff, and that's one example of a local business. I've taken senior staff to Danfoss and had them show us, right? They got stuff stacked up and ready to ship, and also these are the opportunities for local businesses to really thrive, I guess, from the standpoint of import and export, and us being positioned as a true international port of entry and foreign trade zone. So Danfoss, the original ones that were, I told you we had to have 2. The original ones were Danfoss and GT Technologies. Local.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. So, David, as your chairman of your Airport Advisory Committee, we've been working on these issues for a while, and I am very proud of the steps that we're taking tonight. You are correct. This is huge. If you think about the moves that this commission has made with your recommendation, quite frankly, over the past 18 months, from the groundbreaking of the international facility, now creating the trade zone, and with the agenda items that we have taken previously and what we will take up next, These are exciting times for the airport. Really appreciate your leadership. Thank you. So the motion's on the table made by staff recommendation by Commissioner Porter, seconded by the Mayor Pro Tem. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Passes unanimously 5-0. We're on item number 12.02, Mr. Manager.
Yes, sir. We'll hold David right there and continue on with the theme at the airport. You last discussed this particular item in July, at your July 13th meeting, and authorized staff to negotiate with Aero Center Tallahassee for additional development at the airport. I'm pleased to say, while it is always complicated in dealing in these matters, David's done a great job, our partners have done a good job, and we're now at the point to ask for your approval. If I could also ask David to give just a bit of overview of this project and also acknowledge that we've got representatives from Aero Center here as well. David?
Yes, thank you. And if I could get the presentation for item 12.02 pulled up. I would like to acknowledge the Flightline family here, Mac and Danny Langston and their families are here, along with the representatives from Aero Center Tallahassee, Sanjay and Jeremy are here. So certainly appreciate them coming and being a part of the meeting today. And from the standpoint of what we set out to do when we received this proposal and some of the goals, collective goals of the airport, Flightline, and the proposed development from Aero Center, it was an ambitious task, right? And you'll see that in all the attachments to this agenda item. It was very ambitious, but I'm very pleased to say that working with Flightline and working with Aero Center Tallahassee, they certainly made it a lot easier process as we continued to negotiate. We held them to some pretty strict terms, right, from the standpoint of the development and what our expectations were. My goal going into it was that everybody wins. Flightline wanted to consolidate numerous agreements that they had. Aero Center wanted to develop the FBO. We wanted one of the old terminal building redeveloped to a higher and better use, and also the future revenues that'll come along with this. So the development in the airport and the future revenue streams that it provides. Again, I start out with our strategic goals and priorities because this certainly complements many of those. And so from that standpoint, we set out to develop separate scopes for both Flightline and Aero Center. And just to briefly summarize, with respect to Aero Center Tallahassee, as a part of these key business terms that I've provided in the attachments, that was your request previously, is for us to bring this back to you and let you see a little more detail in how this was structured and all. So that's what we're doing here today. But from the standpoint of Aero Center, they would certainly acquire some of the property that Flightline, who's been a long-standing and great partner out at the airport, a true part of this community. They've got a lot of deep roots in this community. And so I just put the two of them together and asked them to negotiate Aero trying to get some of the property that Flightline leased, and they did a great job. But from that standpoint, they would assume some of the land areas and leases currently occupied by Flightline, with Flightline's concurrence. They would assume management, operation, and development of our T-hangar area. They would demolish the old terminal and construct the new FBO, along with 2 new hangars that are up in that area that would replace the footprint of the old terminal area as you know it today. With respect to Flightline Development Corporation, they would sell and assign their facilities on the north end to Aero Center. They would relocate their administrative offices to an adjacent hangar that recently became vacant by U.S. Forestry, who relocated off the airport. And so Flightline would assume that hangar, and that would become their new offices as a part of their operation once they vacated that old terminal facility where they're currently at. And it would consolidate those Flightline agreements into a single agreement as well. So we get Flightline closer. If you're familiar, the central ramp area, Flightline's got a presence on with their avionics hangar, their technical services hangar and all, where they do the airframe and power plant repairs to various aircraft out there. With respect to economic impact of all of this, it would have a net gain of approximately 29 permanent jobs working at the FBO facility. Flightline would maintain their staffing as appropriate and would create 100 temporary construction jobs and would result in a combined economic impact of over $19 million. This is just a general footprint of where the FBO would go. This is the north apron out at the airport, and so this is a general footprint. That building just to the right of the box is where Flightline would relocate to, and winter will work, but anyway, that's where Flightline would relocate their offices to. In the interim, once Aero Center assumed the Flightline agreements, you know, I call it my favorite agreement of all the attachments because it's kind of silly, but attachment 7, I believe it is, we would actually have to come back and give Flightline an airport use agreement to sublease the space from Aero Center and all. So that's just part of the transition plan as we move ahead. But this is it. So if you take the footprint of the old terminal, this building on the far right would be where Flightline would relocate to, and then you would see the FBO building, 2 new hangars, and then Aero Center would also assume what you may know today, we've commonly referred to it as the Honda Jet hangar. Aero Center would assume that hangar as well. So they would basically have 3 new hangars to work cohesively with the general aviation, the typical services provided by a full-service FBO out at the airport. And I might mention, you know, our fuel sales, just took a peek at that right before the meeting here. I was just wanting to refresh on that. And we've sold over 5 million gallons of fuel out at the airport, okay? And so, you know, one FBO, if you want to keep numbers simple, you know, it can be debated by various FBOs, but 1 million gallons and thereabouts justifies the need for another FBO. So we're, with our growth and our capacity projections as we continue to move ahead, I'm certainly very excited about this because it's certainly setting the stage for a new entrant coming on the airport, getting over $10 million of investment, and really moving us forward. With respect to those T hangars areas, we were also able to negotiate with Aero Center and talk about, you know, not just an assignment of the lease, but assignment and improvements to the T hangar area, right? And so they've committed to actually building additional T hangars for us up on the north end as well, and making improvements to the pilot lounge area, adding another self-serve fuel tank, which is very popular amongst the general aviation community, so they can save a few dollars on their overall fuel bill. And so I'm very excited with respect to the improvements that we would see in the T hangar area there as well. These are the next steps. You've seen this before, but again, ongoing coordination, complete negotiations, finalize these agreements, working with legal, the FAA and FDOT, moving forward, doing the appropriate environmental assessments, the airspace analysis on the height of the building and the distance from the runway, and also ensuring there's no line of sight interference with the tower, and also completing those final design documents and beginning constructions within the next year or two. Talking to Aero Center, they are very excited to get into this community. You know, with respect to that 1 year time frame, it could even be a little bit sooner than that. But we would need to go through the necessary permitting process and get everything taken care of there. So again, very excited about the opportunity. It moves the airport forward, moves the community forward, and certainly provides another option for general aviation.
Excellent, thank you. Mr. Clerk, do we have any public comment on this item?
No, sir.
Well, first of all, David, once again, this is fantastic. This is great. And the recommendation is for option number 1, correct?
Yes, sir.
Move staff recommendation, option number 1, Mr. Mayor.
Been properly moved by the Mayor Pro Tem, seconded by Commissioner Williams-Cox. Our friends from Aero Center, welcome to the aviation family. We're looking forward to growing with you. But I also do want to give a shout out to Flightline as well for the amazing work and partnership that we've had literally for decades. And we appreciate your willingness to grow with us as well. These are exciting times. Any comments, questions?
Yeah,
Mayor Pro Tem.
Yeah, I just wanted to certainly highlight the two things that I mean, all of it is important, the services that will be provided here in the community, but one of the things that, we talk about constantly are our private sector jobs that we create here in the community, as well as the economic impact. And both of those with these two projects are tremendous. Both the jobs that will be created, high wage, high skill jobs, not manual labor type, minimum wage jobs, but high skill, high wage jobs, and the economic impact in the multi-millions of dollars annually. And that's what we're trying to achieve here in the city of Tallahassee. And David, thank you for the work that you and your staff are doing at the Tallahassee International Airport. And I think it will be continue to be a tremendous benefit to our community in that regard. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Motion's been properly made by the Mayor Pro Tem, seconded by Commissioner Williams-Cox. See no further comment. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed. Passes unanimously 5-0. On a separate note, your team did a great job with Wings and Wheels this past weekend. What a wonderful event. And yeah, great job.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Appreciate you being there. Thank you.
Yep. Mr. Manager, we're on item number 12.03, excuse me.
Thank you, sir. This is a good one. I think
Those past two were good ones.
these are great. These are great, but sometimes you get these special ones, and this is asking your permission to name the ball field at Lafayette Park in honor of David Chapman. Many of us have had an opportunity to work with David, and he's a true in the starting lineup of Team Tallahassee. We know that, and this came to us a request. It went through the process. It was requested by the department to do this naming. The Parks and Recreation Advisory Board reviewed it at their meeting in October and have voted unanimously to recommend the request to you. I'd like to ask Ashley to give us a little background on this matter and really highlight some of David's achievements.
Thank you, Mr. Manager. Mayor, Commissioners, it is truly my pleasure to present this item to you all today for your consideration. David was born and raised in Tallahassee. He grew up playing baseball and football at Lafayette Park. He played in all of our adult athletic leagues for many, many years. Graduate of Leon High School and TCC, got his degree in recreation at FSU, later got a master's in public administration at FSU, and had a 35-year stellar career with the city of Tallahassee. Yeah. He started in 1972 as a play camp counselor at Lafayette Park. He moved up through the ranks, serving as assistant supervisor at Palmer Monroe Community Center, served as supervisor of our recreation area that was over special events and summer camps. He was administrative supervisor over capital projects. He actually even served a stint up in the city manager's office as an acting assistant to the city manager, and served for many years as our Parks Division superintendent, and then was our assistant director for 7 years. At that time, he thought about retiring and did, and it didn't last, thankfully. We were able to convince him to come back out of retirement, and he served as our director for 2 more years, finally retiring for good in 2007. And I can tell you that the mark that David has left on our community through his career is not just in terms of the impacts that his role allowed him to have on some of our park facilities, the acquisition of some of the parks that we have in our system today, certainly for the care and upkeep of those parks, including and especially Lafayette Park. But he also certainly has had a significant impact as a role model and as a mentor on many of the staff that are currently serving in our department. And I count myself as a proud one of those that he helped along in their career. I had the pleasure of serving as his assistant director when he was our director, and just can't say enough about the impact that he's had on the history and the development of the Parks and Recreation Department. It's such a fitting tribute to pick this field at Lafayette Park as a way to honor that great service. He's lived across the street from the field for 47 years, since 1975. He certainly has been involved with the park for many years. Not only, as I said, did he play there, he coached there, and he actually coached so many young people in a variety of different leagues and programs throughout our community. And he certainly has been a major figure in the development and improvements and enhancements of Lafayette Park. And I can tell you that to this day, he will still call me and say, Ashley, you need to get somebody over there and check the dugout over on third base, or there's a drainage problem, or, you know, anything like that. He just keeps his eye on that field. He's very proud of the programs that are there. And I can tell you that's a very, very fitting tribute and honor that we wholeheartedly endorse and ask for your approval today.
Great presentation. Is this the field right there at Terrace?
It's right there on the corner of Williams Street, it's behind the Lafayette Park Community Center.
Yeah. Okay.
Yep.
Excellent. Mr. Cook, do we have any public comment on this item?
Mayor, we do have one speaker on this item, Stanley Sims.
Your name and address for the record, please.
My name is Stanley Sims. I'm at 1320 Avondale Way. I thought it would be robbery to not speak on it. My very first job was at Lafayette Park. I was 15 years old. My mom then, Mr. Cook, was working for Bob Enza. And David walked into the office when the clerk's office then was where Clayman was, in the Pepper Building. And he gave me an opportunity, and me being me at 15, Curtis Blow had the new rap out. It's like a jungle sometimes. It makes me wonder how I keep from going under. And the summer jobs there was my first summer job, so I would gather all the kids together on that baseball field. And David, not unbeknownst to me, was looking out of his kitchen window, and I had all of these kids saying, it's like a jungle sometimes, it makes me wonder how I keep from going under. But he couldn't quite make out what the kids were saying. And so this was back in the 70s. I'm the first black summer camp person on that lot. So David, I see come down there, and he's like, Stanley, what's going on? I said, we rapping. He said, oh, that's, and he started rapping with us. That's David. Another person that was his sidekick was Kathleen Flynn. These people, title didn't mean nothing to David. It was about making this community happy. That's David. You see a mud puddle? He didn't pick up the phone and call the mud puddle guy. He'll call Doris up there to the craft shop and say, Doris, you got a shovel up there? Let me get it in smooth. That's the level of service that David has done. I still keep in touch with David on Facebook. I'm very proud of what the opportunity that he has given to me, the service that he has given to this community. That's why it's people like David that I don't mind standing in the gap. I know where we've been, and I know we can go back there. Thank you so much, Ashley. Thank you, David. Thank you, Doris. Thank you, Kathleen Flynn. I'm trying to remember my director. Yes, thank you, Lois Johnson, and her husband, Mr. Johnson. Those people molded me. It was not just a job, but we were a family, and I just wanted to not miss this opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker, please.
That's the only speaker on this item.
Okay, let's open it up for comment, direction.
Move acceptance of the recommendation.
Been properly moved by Commissioner Williams-Cox, seconded by the Mayor Pro Tem. Any further comment? Seeing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed. Passes unanimously 5-0. 12.04, Mr. Manager.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is a follow-up from the ordinance that you adopted in March, enabling TPD to better enforce our noise ordinance standards. You'll recall you brought this matter up at your January retreat as you were receiving complaints from citizens that were originating from parking lot parties that were happening around town. In March, you took action. You gave the police more authority to deal with these matters, and over the last 6 months, they have worked toward that end. Deputy Chief Holmes has been at the tip of the spear leading this charge, and he's here to provide an overview of how that has gone. In addition, since that time, the state adopted a new law dealing with moving vehicles. So the ordinance that you adopted dealt with physical static locations. Complementary to that, the state has adopted an ordinance that helps regulate the sound coming from moving vehicles. DC Holmes will share a bit about that. What we know is that the law has been passed. The rule enabling the law is still in motion. We expect that to be in place in December, which will help augment what we have in place today with our noise ordinance. So let me ask Deputy Chief Holmes to provide an overview of kind of our experience where we find ourselves and answer any questions that you might have.
Thank you, City Manager. Thank you, Mayor who stepped out, City Commissioners, and City Manager. As City Manager said, this is the 6-month update review of our noise ordinance. On March 9th this year, City Commission, you, our City Commission, voted unanimously to enact the revised ordinance, provide the Tallahassee Police Department with an additional tool to address noise disturbances. The revised ordinance gave the Tallahassee Police Department the ability to address noise disturbances in our community. Primarily, the large parking lot gatherings which had become a nuisance throughout our city. The revised ordinance was designed to gain compliance. It has given our officers the authority to proactively address excessive noise without a complainant. It also allowed our officers to be the initiator when the excessive noise issues come in and respond to citizens' complaints for calls for services without involving the citizen who may want to remain anonymous. This enforcement mechanism was not available to the Tallahassee Police Department previously. Within the first 6 months, the revised ordinance is proving to be effective. There was an increase in police-initiated complaints, which means officers actually going out and seeing a violation and proactively addressing it. There was also an increase in warnings and written citations from March 9th through September 9th of this year, compared to the previous year, which we didn't have this ordinance as a tool. As a result, the overall number of citizen-initiated noise complaints is slightly downward here in the city. Since its adoption, the Tallahassee Police Department has observed that disturbances in our high-frequency areas have noticeably decreased. Those were the areas that we were consistently getting the large parking lot gatherings and people gathering and playing excessively loud music, which now we're able to actually go in and do something about versus previous. And we've noticed a decrease in our problematic areas. Our expectation to see the reduction in these large parking lot areas to continue and the associated illegal activity that accompanied it, we expect that to reduce as we continue on as well. This will be achieved through us enforcing higher fines and also issuing more citations here in the near future. Additionally, the enforcement standards of state statute 316.3045 on audible sound from moving vehicles will start in December in this year, in a couple of months. This will further increase the Tallahassee Police Department's ability to address these noise disturbances. So more about the law that's coming, the city manager spoke to you about earlier. It's House Bill 1435, Code and Traffic Enforcement. This anticipated law will help reduce noise disturbances throughout our entire city. That includes the urban core or entertainment district. The law was signed by Governor DeSantis on May 26th of this year. However, it had to be what's called promulgated by the Department of Florida Highway Safety and Motor Vehicle before it can actually legally be enforced. The bill updates that will state, the new law will state that a person operating or occupying a motor vehicle with a sound plainly audible at a distance of 25 feet or more from the vehicle is in violation of state law, and they are subject to receive a citation for that traffic infraction. It is our hope that this new law will complement the City of Tallahassee Police Department, the City of Tallahassee's noise ordinance, which is in place now. This law will be finalized for enforcement this year on December the 13th. Upon the release of this standard, the Tallahassee Police Department will begin enforcement immediately. This is game changer for us here in the city, in our community and the state, because now we'll be able to address these vehicles that are moving, and they have been a nuisance even with our new noise ordinance. The bulk of the complaints we're receiving is from these vehicles that are moving, playing music excessively loud. So I said earlier, the audible sound from moving vehicle will further increase our ability to address these noise disturbances throughout the city and reduce the amount of complaints that we're receiving. So back to the ordinance, and we're close. Overall, our revised noise ordinance has given us the ability to address the nuisance noise in our community, primarily the large parking lot gatherings, which was the main reason that we came forth with this, to gain compliance and then use it to clear out these parking lots and the other activity that accompanies these gatherings. Our officers love the new ordinance. It is a tool that they have. They can use discretion upon observing a violation, just like we do with other things. And it is our expectation to continue to show reduction of overall complaints here in our city. The large parking lot gatherings, hopefully this will also enable us to address these gatherings. They won't be able to just get in their car and take off and drive away. We'll still have probable cause to conduct a traffic stop on them. And most of the time we have these violations, there's also other fruits of crime going on that will be addressed too. So a person will be more, alert to observe a police officer or a police car and turn that music down before we even have to make contact with them. So, Commission, we respectfully request that you accept option 1. Continue with our noise ordinance as it is written. Please accept staff's report. Option 1. I'm here for any questions.
Thank you, DC. Appreciate it.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Clerk, do we have any public comment on this item?
Yes, Mayor, we have about 10 speakers on this item.
All right, let's start.
Okay, the first speaker is Eric Mulling, and as the speakers begin, I'll remind that you'll have 3 minutes for remarks. Speakers will come to the microphone here in the middle of the chambers where Deputy Chief was speaking from. There is a light in front of the mayor that'll start off green and will turn yellow when you get to 2.5, and then red when your 3 minutes have expired.
Great to see you. Thanks for joining us. Your name and address for the record, please.
Eric Mullins, 600 West Gain Street. Yeah, it sounds like what you guys are doing for the rest of the city is awesome. Sounds like law enforcement has the tools they need. But you guys forgot, we're in the urban core. None of this is affecting us. The new HB 1435 certainly will help with the car parties being experienced with some of the other hoteliers and the residents. I know that the All Saints District has reached out to you guys as well about the same problems. I know the City Center has reached out to you guys about the same problem. Myers Park Neighborhood Association, Woodland Parks Neighborhood Association, and a couple of individuals down on the West Tennessee Street side of town have reached out to the commissioners of the city about the same issues. Our problem continues and will continue to be that there's no reasonableness to the outside noise from the clubs. If you stop the cars, you've stopped half our problems. But as long as the nightclubs can bang away in the middle of the night, 2 a.m. on a Sunday, or any other day of the week, it's just not reasonable. Oyster City Brewing, they're throwing awesome events every weekend. They start, they kick them off, live bands, football games. They've got all these great things going on. They end at 11. Our hotel guests are going over there. They're participating in this. The hotel guests are saying, wow, it's really loud. When's this going to stop? We say, they stop before 11. And the next thing we know, we see them going across the street, join the party. We can all live, work, and play in this neighborhood. We can all benefit from it. We're not looking for crickets. We're just looking for some reasonableness when people normally sleep. And that's all. And it's working everywhere else. It needs to work for us as well. We are part of the city of Tallahassee. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Our next speaker, please.
Next speaker is Cheryl Harwood. Cheryl Harwood, followed by Stanley Sims. Not seeing Cheryl Harwood, we'll go to Stanley Sims.
Your name and address for the record, please.
Mayor, I'm Stanley Sims, still at 1320 Avondale Way. And Deputy Chief, I want to really thank, this is a little difficult because they don't say this often. I want to thank TPD. You guys have really tried to aggressively control this noise problem. And it's challenging. I've been down there, hotel guy, and I've got this lady on, I better not give her a name, and I understand. And finding that happy medium is really challenging. And though you guys have really done this in a way I can't even find criticism, but let me share something with you that I think is my concern with this new governor's law that has been passed with moving vehicles. I just hope that ain't being used as a target. You understand? Because and I'm not saying this is going on, Chief. I'm not alleging that. I'm saying that in our conversations when we can with mandatory seatbelts, those seatbelts things were used as targeting frames to pull black voters over. But this is a very complex situation. A lot of investment, private and government dollars have went to gain. And I think that this is going to be an ongoing issue that we will always have to monitor. But I do want to say, good job, Deputy Chief. I will be calling about this moving violation thing. I just want to make sure because my son has a Honda Accord and he's got these high-powered speakers. He has not installed them yet, but they vibrate. I think that's against the ordinance. That's what I'm telling him, whether it's not or not, but I'm telling him it is. Those are the kind of things that we are there. I do empathize with you. But and that don't sound good. They teaching me to sound better. I think we need to keep talking with each other. And if anything I can do, I'll be more than happy. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Our next speaker, please.
Next is Carol Ann Savage. Carol Ann Savage, and then Michael Davis will follow.
Thank you for joining us. Your name and address for the record, please.
Hi, Carol Ann Savage, and 1100 Railroad. I represent the Hyatt House down at Railroad Square. I also echo the concerns. A lot of times on weekends, and thank you for all of your service. A lot of times on the weekends, we get numerous complaints, anywhere between 10 to 20 from our guests. 2 a.m. to 4 a.m., FAMU has multiple cars. They're partying outside of the hotel, which results in us having to do room adjustments, which takes away from the money that our hotel company is bringing in, as well as the taxes. I feel like it's really an issue that needs to be addressed. I've never lived in a city that will just allow the Common Core to have these pop-up parties. So if you read the reviews, I'm happy to share our reviews. It's just, it's a great hotel. We love the location. However, we'll never stay there again. So we get that on our social media, which I don't know if you know, but about 75% of travelers today read reviews prior to going to hotels, so it really hurts our business. I have people call saying, hey, you know, the hotel looks great. I'm excited about bringing our kids to the football games, but I keep reading there's reviews about like noise and all that kind of stuff. So it definitely deters visitors from coming to my hotel, which then affects, you know, me and my staff. So I'd really like to see some adjustments to the Common Core to make sure that we can try to eliminate some of these noise. So thank you for your time.
Thank you. Our next speaker, please.
Michael Davis, followed by Keith Hooger-Hoyt.
Thanks for joining us. Your name and address for the record, please.
Michael Davis, 824 Railroad Avenue. I represent the Hampton Inn Suites, Tallahassee Capital University. Here echoing the same message that both Eric and Carol Ann have both echoed. Believe that TPD has been doing a phenomenal job with the resources they have outside of the urban core and how much of an effect that has been having for them. And we try our best at our hotel to try and have a positive relationship with the TPD officers that do patrol our area. And they do the best to their ability. But I believe that the urban core noise ordinance for our area is what hinders their ability and what hinders us. As Carol Ann mentioned, a lot of the comments that we'll get are great hotel, great property, great staff. Noise is absolutely unbearable. Won't come back and won't stay in this area. Another issue is that, I mean, just the resulting noise issues from vehicles that are coming from the area also have a play into that. We get guests that are coming up to the area that see our reviews as well and call us to try and just see if it's even a safe area to be in. And that's where it's more concerning for us, is that it's not just, is our hotel great? It's more so, is the area good? Is it safe? Are we going to be okay being in the urban core area? And I know that doesn't just affect us as hoteliers, but it also affects the neighboring community as well. The All Saints District, where people that are living 24 hours a day in their area that are being affected by this as well. So, I mean, something that we're really trying to look for is some sort of compromise on the urban core noise ordinance. So that way, even if it's not eliminated entirely, even if it's just adjusted, a lot of our guests can understand being there for noise going towards midnight. They understand these big weekends, football weekends, where those are affected. But the 2 a.m., which then extends into 3, 4 a.m. because of the people that are still hanging around in the area is where it really comes in. But I really thank you for your time and allowing me to speak.
Thank you. Our next speaker, please.
Next is Keith Hooger-Hoyt, who will possibly correct that pronunciation, and then Patrick Rowe.
Thanks for joining us. Name and address for the record, please.
Keith Hooger-Hyde. And I am from the Residence Inn at 600 West Gain Street, sharing my day with Mr. Mullins, and also at the AC Hotel at 801 South Gadsden. Today, simple, short, and sweet, I think, just to call to attention that everybody, I think we can all agree, everybody in the community should have the ability to be able to sleep equally at night. And the current policies that are in place has it so that if you happen to be living not in a suburb, but in or near the downtown or urban core, you are permitted 5 hours of sleep 7 days a week. I don't think we need an expert to stand here to tell us that that is normal to have only 5 hours of sleep or acceptable, because it's not, and it's common sense. And it needs to be revisited so that it could be placed in a more reasonable manner and equitable for the entire community to be able to enjoy the same level of leisure for sleep at night, whether you are in a suburb or in the downtown area. That is for me. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker, please, Mr. Clark.
Mayor, the next speaker is Patrick Rowe, then Haley Amundson.
Thanks for joining us. Your name and address for the record, please.
My name is Dr. Patrick Rowe. I live just across the street in the center condo at 215 West College Avenue. I'm in Unit 301. And The condo board met last week, and I went there and talked about the noise problem to see their response and if they were being disturbed by this. Every person on the board said it's a serious problem. And yesterday, I sent a letter to all of you that was written by the board, and they're stating something needs to be done. The main source of noise that we're experiencing in the condo is from potbellies. And it's not just on the weekend. It's during weekdays when people are working, trying to get sleep. Even students are complaining, saying that they can't study, they can't sleep at night, they can't do well at school because of this noise problem. And people have told me that they are calling the police and they're not doing anything. I'm hoping changes will take place. And when there is a call, a complaint, that something is actually done. The way things are now is just not working. And to designate that there are different noise rules for the area of Tallahassee, where in the outer areas there are different rules is not right. There should be rules the same throughout the city. So I hope the problem will be solved, and noise from bars that are not being reasonable and cars making too much noise, these things, they need to change. So thank you for listening. I hope we can do something. I hope we can work together to solve the problem and give the police what they need to respond to the people who are abusing and making things difficult for everyone. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Our next speaker, please.
Haley, excuse me, Haley Amundson, followed by Blake Sandler.
Thanks for joining us. Your name and address for the record, please.
Haley Amundson, the Cloisters of All Saints, 415 St. Francis Street. I chose to purchase my home in All Saints neighborhood because it's walkable, bikeable, accessible to grocery stores, which is every professional's dream. I love my home. The urban core deregulation of noise is not allowing me to have quiet enjoyment of my property, which will stifle property value growth if this urban core stands. As you saw in the Cloisters of All Saints HOA board letter that was sent, this urban core is not within the comprehensive plan and is inconsistent with the comprehensive plan's future land use designations and zoning districts. Noise ordinances must be a foundational tenet to encourage quality development and investment. Before the noise ordinance was presented to the public and voted on within 1 week, our noise complaints were taken seriously and addressed within a reasonable timeframe several times in December of 2021. Alternatively, after the noise ordinance was voted on in February 2022, my fiance and I had much different experiences from operators and officers responding to our complaints, which is outlined in the Cloisters of All Saints HOA board letter. We want a noise ordinance that is the same as the rest of the residential properties within Tallahassee. Since we pay property taxes, why are our services being cut, specifically regulating noise ordinances? This ordinance creates unlivable and dangerous conditions for residents within the urban core. Because residents have no authority to fine neighbors for noise violations, it creates dangerous situations. The urban core discourages investment by leaving our community underserved and our investments unprotected. The use of the urban core map to regulate noise is not in compliance with Florida State's Chapter 163, Statute 3177, Paragraph 2, because of the lack of consistency in the mapping of the urban core, since this map presented in the ordinance does not exist in the comprehensive plan or zoning districts. In the October 24th email that I sent to the commission, since the urban core does not have the same noise regulation as the rest of the city, the noise have the noise complaints have increased by 7% within the urban core, and that's from a public records request. The current noise ordinance is unlivable. I urge the commission to reference the stakeholder recommendations within the Cloisters of All Saints HOA board letter. This letter's recommendations in section 4 remove the use of the urban core from the ordinance and reinstate noise measurements and regulate unacceptable noise after 10 p.m. until 7 a.m., which is what other Tallahassee neighborhoods enjoy, such as Myers Park, which is walkable from our neighborhood. I'm happy to answer any questions you may have, and I look forward to working with you all to find a solution that works for everyone. Thank you.
Thank you.
Blake
Our next
Sandler,
speaker, please.
Blake Sandler, then Chris Loudon.
Thank you for joining us. Your name and address for the record, please.
Thank you. My name is Blake Sandler, and I live in the Cloisters of All Saints at 415 St. Francis Street. I have 4 years of financial analysis experience with a specialization in business and solvency risk. I received my MBA here at FSU with a specialization in quantitative analytics and a bachelor's of science degree also from FSU in finance with a minor in psychology. Tallahassee's use of the urban core in ordinance number 22013 should be taken out of the ordinance as it is discouraging density, business development, and livability for its residents. To live and work in a place, there needs to be an agreed upon time for quiet. And this ordinance is saying that I live in a club or an entertainment district, but I don't live by a club. I live in a residential neighborhood, and my noise complaints are not being addressed because of my address. As a matter of fact, all the noise complaints I called about did not originate from a club or a bar, but from a neighboring rental property with students. The urban core is where City Hall is located, and state office buildings conduct business. This is the district that works for the city and state, and if we want to retain people who want to live and work downtown, we need a regulation of noise from 10 p.m. to 7 a.m., just like every other part of the city. All we are asking for is equality in service as compared to the rest of Tallahassee. Cascades Park has an amphitheater, and its concerts have to end around 10 p.m. because they are outside the urban core. So the residents of Myers Park may have some quiet enjoyment of their property during sleeping hours. Midtown has even more bars and a small amount of space with concert venues, and they are allowed to have enforceable noise ordinances for commercial and residential properties. The question I am asking all of you today is, why should my neighborhood be treated any differently? For those that live in the urban core, we feel that our city services to protect our investments are significantly less than other communities in Tallahassee. The city should be protecting its investments in walkable areas. However, by stifling property rights with a lack of quiet enjoyment of property, you stifle the growth of property values. And with interest rates on the rise, this is not a good time to be putting our investments at risk, since interest rates also have an inverse relationship to property values. A city gets a significant amount of its funding from property tax revenue, which is directly linked to the value of property in the city. Therefore, our investments are also the city's investments for current and future funding. We pay property taxes in the city limits just like the rest of the city, and we want equal service. The urban core district map severely underserves our downtown community, which is why I am strongly urging you to regulate the noise in the urban core by striking out the urban core district map from this ordinance so that noise here is regulated just like the rest of Tallahassee. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Our next speaker, Mr. Clerk.
Chris Loudon, and that's the last speaker I have, Mayor. I don't believe Cheryl Harwood was here, so this will be our last speaker.
Thanks for joining us. Your name and
Good
address for the
afternoon,
record.
Chris Loudon, 415 St. Francis Street. I'm new here, like I said last time. In 2015, this got changed. It was in the Tallahassee Democrat. I think I sent you all on kind of questionable circumstances. Then this year, it gets changed even more under things that I read, like where like Tampa, Orlando, Fort Lauderdale, this was actually mentioned in your documentation. We're not those cities. And all of those cities have decibel level in their ordinance. They all specifically talk about amplified noise in their ordinances. So you guys are getting the wrong information. So I started digging some more. All our nice hotel who run great facilities, they're a plus for our neighborhood. All the negative reviews, if you read them, you guys should read them. The residential areas around on College Ave, Jefferson, read the reviews for those places. All negative. Bass all night long from establishments over there. Even in the Onyx, this is coming from students. You can't say, oh, well, the students need a place. This isn't an entertainment district. This is residential and commercial office space over here with bar here, bar there. Okay? So that's what's going on down here. And I know the TPD's probably understaffed and overworked and everything, and we appreciate what you guys do. We really do. You know, we need them, but they need the tools, like other people said, and they shouldn't be setting policy. Staff and you guys should be setting policy, right? Isn't that the way that it's supposed to work? I have a little bit of education on this stuff. But this is what needs to happen. Did you guys see my video that I sent you? Do you know where that is in relation to College and Macomb? About 8 blocks, you know DOE building is? You can clearly hear the music coming from the establishment on College and Macomb. Do you guys think that's fair? Do you think that's reasonable? Tell all these your constituents, is that reasonable? That my 14-year-old daughter's got to listen to that all night long from Wednesday to Sunday, not homecoming, you know, one night here, one night there. I mean, we expect that. We welcome that. We like downtown get down. Wednesday to Sunday, not to mention the cars, and then there is a muffler ordinance, state statute on mufflers too, that needs to be enforced by the TPD.
Few seconds remaining.
So we need your help. We need the same as everybody else in the city, same noise ordinance, and we need, if the TPD needs more help, then you guys got to get it for them.
Thank you.
Thanks.
And Mayor,
Our next speaker, please.
I do see that Cheryl Harwood is here, so Cheryl Harwood is our last speaker. Was that right? Oh, no. No, I'm sorry. Then I don't have any other speaker forms unless there's somebody who needs to speak and fill out a form and bring it to me when complete.
Okay. Is there anyone else here that would like to speak on the noise ordinance? Oh, sure. Please. Come on up. Your name and address for the record, please.
Yes, my name is Tiffany Wilson. I live in the Greater Bond community. And for some time now, the noise ordinance have not been working for me. The Tallahassee Police Department has failed me and my family when it comes to the noise ordinance. I actually sent the email out, I would say 4 months ago, speaking about it and saying how I felt about it. And I think something needs to be done. It's not working. The ordinance that's in place is not working at all. And I need something not only to work for me, but also for the people that lives in the Greater Bond community. You know, it's been an ongoing thing, and I want something to be done about it. I want something to be done about it. I think that it shouldn't be at the Tallahassee Police Department discretion if the noise is at a reasonable sound. If I'm living in my home and my neighbors are having a pop-up party at their residence, not in the parking lot, but at their residence is where they be partying and having loud music and, you know, just the ongoing party. I think it should be at my discrepancy of how loud the noise should be. Now, not at TPD discrepancy of how loud it should be, because if it's at their discrepancy, then they don't address it. It gets overlooked. And then I have to continue to sit in my house and hear loud music, and not just that, hear the loud cars ride by as well. So it needs to be addressed. Something needs to be changed within that ordinance because it's not working.
Excellent.
Hi, my name is Curtis Dardell. I live at 1948 Key Street, also in the Greater Bond community. I just want to address what TPD doesn't do in my neighborhood. I know they do a great job throughout the city, but in my neighborhood, it's a failure. There's constantly pop-up parties for drug-fueled gatherings, which TPD also knows. They've came in my neighborhood and seen people partying, gatherings, parking on our lawn, and we not partying, but they're using our lawn for their parties. the disrespect has to stop. You know, TPD knows what goes on in the Greater Bond community. They've been knowing what goes on there forever. And Joe Bullard standing here receiving his award is kind of like a slap on the wrist for my community, because you guys know what goes on in my community. The Greater Bond community, FAMU is there. There are alumni there visiting. There are a lot of gatherings there. We understand that. We want the money, but we don't want the problems that comes with the money, you know? We know that crime support TPD. When there's crime, they're making money. When there's crime, you guys are making money. So with the overlooking some of what been going on, it just needs to be addressed appropriately. It doesn't take a rocket scientist to see that somebody's disturbing me at 1 o'clock in the morning, 3 o'clock in the morning, 4 o'clock in the morning, or even 10 o'clock at night. So I just wanted to come down here and voice my opinion, because, you know, a lot of us don't have the time to get in here and say how we feel about what goes on in this city. So with that being said, I'm done. Thank y'all.
Thank you. Our next speaker, please.
No other speakers that I have, Mayor.
Okay, let's open it up for discussion. Commissioner Williams-Cox.
Mr. Mayor, let me just thank everyone for coming down and sharing. I know some of you we received emails from, but I think that what we have here, we have a conflict in that we're trying to grow our downtown to be an 18-hour downtown, yet we're having conflict with people who live downtown. So somewhere, either we are not going to be an 18-hour downtown, or folks are not going to be able to live downtown, or something. Something has to give, because we are looking at the future of our downtown area, and we're trying to grow it, and I think we're doing a tremendous job. But I think that the residents who choose to live downtown or in wherever they choose to live are saying to us that something else is needed. And I'm sure that we have received feedback, not just now, but we've received feedback. And when we instituted the noise ordinance a few months ago, we really, TBD really did not have a tool. So now there is a tool. We've gotten an update, we've gotten feedback. And I know that the number of calls for noise in the away from downtown has gone down. But now this gives us an opportunity to come on in and figure out what more can we do in the downtown area. But I just want to raise the goal is and have an 18-hour downtown. But I'm also hearing that an 18-hour downtown is not what hoteliers or folks who live downtown are really wanting. So we're in a quandary here. And how to resolve it, I'm not sure, other than to continue talking and try to figure out what's going to work for us, because we're not building a Tallahassee for today. We're building a Tallahassee for the future, for tomorrow. And so we want to make sure that those who live in this area, live downtown, get to enjoy, you know, where they live as well. But for those who want to come and visit downtown, also gets to enjoy. So y'all have heard me say this a lot. It's like the Solomon principle. How do we split this baby? And I don't know. I don't have the answer. I'm just pointing out the obvious, that we have a conflict with our neighbors, those who want to live downtown and those who want to visit downtown. And in the areas where I'm hearing most of the hoteliers discussing and where our residents live, they're between two colleges. And I'm not sure what to expect when you live between two major universities, because young people party. And I don't know how long they go, but when you get to be our age, we're in early, but they are not in early. So we've just got to figure out how to resolve this and keep our city moving forward and having people want to live downtown as well as visit downtown. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Commissioner Porter.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have a couple of questions for TPD.
Deputy Chief.
Yes.
Thank you, Deputy Chief. So It's just a few clarifying questions. So the item says that TPD has observed that disturbances in high-frequency areas have noticeably decreased since the adoption. I was wondering if you could spell out for me what you mean exactly by high-frequency areas? Is that where kind of the pop-up parties were happening?
Yes, problematic areas that we were experiencing consistent complaints from, the elderly, people had medical conditions. Prime example, North Monroe corridor. This has been very effective with assisting that community with those ongoing issues that we were having there. And that's what I mean when I say problematic, those gatherings, and gatherings at other places as well. So we're able to go in and disperse that crowd versus trying to gain voluntary compliance, which was what we were doing before.
And most of those were outside of the urban core, correct?
Yes,
Okay.
most of, yes.
Okay. A few other questions. It sounds like it would be helpful if we had, a map of where these complaints are coming from, because there's sort of two issues here. There's what's happening outside of the urban core, which is, illegal, that we're enforcing. And then there's what's inside of the urban core, which, according to the ordinance, is allowed within, with certain limitations.
Right.
It also sounds like, most of the people in the audience live in the urban core, and the disturbance they're experiencing is coming from the clubs and not necessarily from house parties or the pop-up parties. Is that correct? Like just by, it's both? Okay.
Mainly club.
Okay, all right, hold on, whoa. Hold on, we're not going to have a free-for-all here. Chief?
Mainly the nightclubs, but there are consistent complaints as well from the gatherings at certain locations inside the urban core as well, particularly in the Gain Street, Railroad Avenue area is what I'm trying to say, and also Macomb and College. Those two locations are consistently inundated with complaints. They show no, not bond, sir. But we're talking about the urban core, and those areas that we have the most complaints are the nightclub area. The one nightclub is closed now, so that's been a help. However, it's still gatherings at the service station, and the consistent traffic where they do a lot of cruising in that area between FAMU and Florida State, and the excessive music from those moving vehicles.
Okay. And then I'm sure some of this was discussed when we originally passed this ordinance. What kind of communication or relationship do we have with those club owners? Have they been receptive? I understand, I agree. We want an 18-hour downtown. We also want people to be good neighbors. I'm not a sound engineer, obviously. Right. It seems to me like the worst thing is when these are outdoor spaces because the noise is traveling.
Yes.
And some things have to do with like literally the way that the speakers are positioned. Have we had any of those discussions? Have they been open to any adjustments?
We've had discussions, in particular without naming the club. One, the relationship has improved. They are now trying to solicit our help, but there's certain things they got to get in order. One of the things is this noise and voluntary compliance. One location is not there anymore, and it's been beneficial for them not being there anymore. So that's two locations that we know we had problems with. One's no longer there, and we're addressing the other avenues of noise that they're making, and one that's consistent and compliance, voluntary compliance is what we see, And, when you have outside parties going on, outside speakers, it really don't matter how low you turn them down, it still is going to permeate throughout that community. So that's been the issue with that. So
Okay.
we still try to work with them and try to gain voluntary compliance, but we haven't been successful.
Okay, and I think I have one final question. I know that we had the task force that was specific to, sort of the pop-up parties during COVID, and we experienced, we incurred a cost increase of, I think it was about $2 million for the overtime that required. Do you have a sense of, like, how many more or less resources are we using of your time? Is it helping reduce, I understand there's a correlation between if there are reductions,
Right.
then it's less time, but I'm wondering if you could comment on that.
Well, we are still using, the task, it's not a task force, but we use our violent crime unit and our cops unit. Predominantly, we get them to adjust their schedules a lot to address it. The overtime should decrease significantly as we continue to carry on. But we don't have to solicit the overtime that we were once getting in mandating that squad stay over consistently because we use those particular units just to address, because we still having them. So we use those units to address and make sure we are able to penetrate and reduce any escalation that may occur.
Okay, and then final question. For House Bill 1435 and just the ordinance that we've passed, at our last meeting, we discussed sort of, community engagement, like how we let people know. Is that something we've thought about with the, the motor vehicle regulation and the change in that law?
Yes, ma'am. We did that when we thought we were going to be able to enforce it in July.
Okay.
But, it was pulled just before we were getting ready to issue the citation. So it'll be period. We'll put out some announcements through social media and also through the news, just to make sure our community is aware that this is coming, and also make sure they're aware of the language, because you're talking about 25 feet. That's actually less than what our ordinance is. It's not very far. That's from, me to Commissioner Richardson. And, if your music is excessive, it's going to be a situation where you're going to more than likely have an encounter with police, or, just seeing an officer, you may turn that down before we even have to make contact. And all we seek is compliance anytime we address these situations. We understand that a lot of times people don't realize that their music is that loud.
And y'all do what you need to do. Maybe we should consider radio advertisements for that as well, for people in their cars. But okay, thank you. Thank you, Deputy Chief.
Commissioner Mello.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I guess I want to address three things. First off, Q Street isn't in the urban core, correct?
No, sir. No.
Okay. I would just, can we follow up with the people here? Because if you're talking noise complaints at 1 a.m., that we have an ordinance in place that should allow for that to cease. Second, as far as automobiles, current state law, until that goes into effect, whether you're in the urban core or not, we don't really have any enforcement mechanism over moving automobiles.
I missed part of your question. Could you please repeat it?
Under current state law that's in motion to allow for us to address complaints coming from moving automobiles, our local ordinance doesn't oversee that, whether it's in the urban core or not. Is that accurate?
No, sir. Our current noise ordinance do not apply to moving vehicles. We cannot stop a vehicle at this time legally if it's moving, playing excessive music. Only if it's parked, say, in a parking lot, and the vehicle occupant is sitting in there blasting his music excessively and causing disturbance. Then we can address it with our current noise ordinance. That's going to change after the law.
And that's what I'm getting at. Across the city, I think that issue will be resolved, more likely to be resolved with state law going into effect. I think we probably see a lot more cars in the urban core, not because we call it the urban core, but because it's where people are drawn to hang out, party, what have you. So I do think relief is coming that. And then the third issue, which I am open to a conversation about, is outdoor amplified music in the urban core past a certain time. And I don't think that should be 2 a.m. for outdoor amplified music. You know, we know of we know of some establishments, you know, we've dealt with them over the years. We've tried to get voluntary compliance. We try to encourage people to be a good neighbor, but it does seem to get to a point where if we say you can go to 2 a.m., they're going to go till 2 a.m. Regardless, I think if it's inside the confines of the walls of your building, I do think you have a very private property rights to be loud in a downtown district. And I think that level of volume probably would be louder than what we allow outside of the urban core. So I'm very hesitant to say we shouldn't have an urban core, because we do want to find the balance between being able to live, party, what have you, and have a vibrant downtown. But I have witnessed loud amplified music with 10 people in a parking lot at very, very, very loud levels for seemingly no real purpose. I do think, 11, 12 is probably pushing it, or to the appropriate level of amplified outdoor music, but that is a conversation I would like to explore, but I don't think we should look at, wiping away an urban core district altogether.
Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is an interesting conversation, and I can tell you I've been impacted personally. I've had to call TPD myself because of the noise coming from the Southside Shopping Center parking lot. And I live just under a mile away from that parking lot. And we can hear I can imagine what my neighbors that are in closer proximity to that parking lot must go through if I'm almost a mile away and it booms in my bedroom. And so, when it impacts you personally, you tend to pay more attention to the complaints that we hear. I have gotten lots of emails, text messages about the business at Macomb and College Avenue, because it abuts two apartment complexes, and there's one across the street. And so I get complaints from those establishments. And, I agree with Commissioner Matlow that, I don't see why, especially if it's noise that's impacting businesses, that's impacting residences, that it should go on amplified like that until 2 o'clock in the morning. I just don't see, especially, and especially during the week. I mean, I'm horrified about what's going to happen in that shop and in that parking lot this coming weekend, because I know we're going to catch it. And we have had problems in Bond. This is not the first time. I have a friend that lives in Bond on Saxon Street, and I was getting calls from them all the time. They had a neighbor that would put speakers out in the yard, and she had a daughter. I think her daughter has graduated, but she had a daughter in high school, and she couldn't even do her homework because of the volume of the music right next door in their neighborhood. We're not talking about an urban core. We're talking about in a neighborhood. So it is a problem. I think what we have done is working outside of the urban core, but now there's got to be more of a focus on what we can do to impact the urban core and what these businesses are going through, and neighbors who have an expectation that when they go to bed at night at 10, 11, 12, that they're going to be able to get a good night's sleep without their windows rattling or their walls shaking because of music a mile away. And so I think that is a discussion that we're going to have and see where we can find that appropriate balance. But I tell you, I'm impacted by, and I'm talking about during the week. I'm not talking about just on a Friday night or a Saturday. I'm talking during the week. that we can hear that noise from that South Side Shopping Center parking lot. So it's a conversation that we have to have. It can't just stop here. We're going to have to come up with some sensible solutions as to how we resolve this issue where everybody can feel comfortable that, you know, their issues have been heard and we've come to a resolution that's good for our entire community. I don't know what that is, but we've got to come together and see. I'm sure that if we put all of our minds together, we can come up with solution as we did before with the current ordinance that we have. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. So, Chief, I think you've heard a lot of concerns about with neighborhood pop-up parties. I do share concerns as well about this weekend. It's a big weekend in Tallahassee. I'm sure we've got the game plan in place to be able to address these issues, but especially down the Gain Street Railroad corridor right there that impacts the residents in the Bond neighborhood too. Look, I've been in Bond after a football game, walking back to a car, and you have thousands of people parking on the streets. It's a safety issue too. Sometimes when both sides of the road are parked on because of the neighborhood parties, you can't get an emergency vehicle through there as well. Right. So it does impact the neighborhoods as well. So I've been listening to you, and I agree. I think we need to bring an item back before the City Commission. I do not have a problem. Now, look, Commissioner Matley, you bring up great points. Commissioner Williams-Cox, you bring up great points. But I agree with you, Commissioner Matley. We're not telling people that we're not telling bars and establishments that you cannot play music.
Right.
What we're saying is you got to take it inside.
Right.
You can't have amplified music outside. So I do think it's appropriate to have the conversation. I'll come to you, Commissioner Matlow, for the motion of bringing back something at the next meeting or future meeting, dealing with the timing. You know, if we had the same time frames outside the urban core, I agree. Keep the urban core boundary and name, but just have the times associated just like we do outside so that we can regulate outside amplified music. Look, at 10 o'clock on weekdays, take it inside. You can jam till 2, but take it inside, okay? And on Friday and Saturday night, 11 o'clock or whatever, I can't remember off the top of my head what it is, you got to, the outside amplified music has got to be turned off. Take it inside. I think that's a conversation for us to have. Are you willing to make a motion, Commissioner Matlow?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, I'll make a motion to bring back an item addressing the urban core amplified music to have reasonable limits around 10 or 11. We can leave that to staff to.
Second.
Okay. It's been probably moved by Commissioner Matlow, seconded by the Mayor Pro Tem. Any further comments? Commissioner Porter.
Thank you. I just have one question, perhaps for our city manager. Do other cities have this, and have we considered, because I think I've read about this in other cities, adjusting our building requirements for businesses like hotels or anything like that in the urban core?
Commissioner, I'm not aware of that, but we do know that there's different sound regulation in entertainment type areas, and so that's acknowledged. Whether there's any requirement, I doubt there's any building requirement that would, I think your question is that would dampen the sound or?
Yeah, like
I don't
double
believe
pane
so.
or triple pane or, you know,
Yeah, I'm looking at
windows
our
that-
experts, they're
okay.
telling me no.
Okay, thank you.
All right, motion on the table by Commissioner Matlow, seconded by the Mayor Pro Tem. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, passes unanimously, 5-0. We are on item number 12.05.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is a follow-up to your discussion at your last meeting. It provides a scope and requests your authorization to include it in our capital plan for our water and sewer systems. This would add water and sewer and also fire protection to an area that's known as the Southern Triangle that is inside Capitol Circle and inside our Southside Action Plan area. Our staff, Steve Schaefer and his staff, have looked at the engineering needs of it. They've estimated what it would take to do this project. We've got a map of the area so you can visualize it, and we've got some details of what the project would entail and the benefits that it would add. And so I'll ask Steve to kind of give us some highlights, and we ask your authorization to move forward with this project.
Steve, thank you.
Thank you, Manager. Good afternoon, Mayor and Commissioners. I've got just a very quick presentation here. As the manager
Hey,
mentioned,
can we take the conversations outside, y'all? Thank you. Sorry, Steve.
as the manager mentioned, you all have asked us to bring you an item back to look at expanding our water and sewer utilities into what's called the Southern Triangle. They're bounded by Crawfordville Highway, Woodville Highway, and Capitol Circle. This is located within the Southside Action Plan, and investment in this area meets several of the goals that you've established through your strategic plan, including environmental stewardship, quality of life, focused investment in this Tallahassee South Side to provide for opportunities for growth and economic development. So our engineering staff have had the opportunity now to assess the needs for the area to be able to meet the goals that you have asked us to look at. And from that, we have determined that we probably are going to be looking at about having installed about 18,000 feet of gravity main. And of course, not all the properties can necessarily be served by gravity sanitary sewer collection systems, so we have allowed for the potential for up to 3 pump stations and associated force mains with that as well. The opportunity also presents itself to when we extend water, which will require about 16,000 feet of water mains to improve fire protection through the installation of additional fire hydrants in the area. As you can see, the planning level estimates we've got for the work right now, it looks we are looking at about $14 million of investment into the sewer infrastructure and about $6 million into the water infrastructure. So I mentioned a couple of benefits. You've seen more listed right here. I'll just kind of go through them quickly. This is consistent with goals to protect what we'll call the springs. As you all probably know, the DEP actually developed a basin management action plan for the springs due to nitrogen impairments. And this particular project is located in what they call the priority focus area, which is just south of the Cody Scarp, which is an area where the aquifer actually comes closer to the surface, and you don't have the confining layer above the aquifer with clays. It's more sandy soil, so it's much more vulnerable to impact from nitrogen that can result from septic systems. So this project will allow us to remove up to 2,000 pounds a year of nitrogen from that basin. Also, it eliminates potentially costly septic tank maintenance and replacement costs to our citizens, provides enhanced fire protection, as we mentioned a little bit earlier, to Southside businesses and residents, which can also provide opportunities for reductions in homeowners insurance premiums. It furthers Commission's goals for investment within the Southside Action Plan area, as we mentioned, provides needed infrastructure within the urban services area for responsible growth. So that's my presentation. I'm more than happy to answer any questions you might have.
Excellent. Do we have any public comment on this item?
No, sir.
Excellent. Let's open it up for discussion. Direction.
I would like to move that we accept staff recommendation.
Second.
Been properly moved for staff recommendation by the Mayor Pro Tem, seconded by Commissioner Williams-Cox. Commissioner Porter, you are recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have a couple of comments and questions. So I know this has been a long time coming and has been discussed way before I was on the commission, and I do agree that we need to act on this sooner rather than later. The environmental concerns are substantial, have been, raised by a lot of stakeholders. We know that to be the case. I do have some questions, though, and I do personally feel like we need to slow down a little. This was brought up 2 weeks ago. I know it's been in discussion, but as far as the item we have before us, and I think given the questions that I have, I wouldn't feel comfortable making this $20 million plus commitment today. So I know today we're talking about $2 million, but what we're getting at is a lot more than $2 million. So a couple of my I assume that, some of the homes in this area have the capacity to have sewer. I mean, it's a relatively small amount, but I think it was something like 63 homes. And I assume, and can you verify, that's because they don't want to incur the cost of transitioning? I mean, because that cost would be incurred by them to transition?
If they switch over to sewer right now, they would incur the cost to connect with the city sewer, that's correct.
Okay. If the concern is primarily environmental, what alternatives have we considered to mitigate that? Are there any other alternatives to mitigate that you know of?
And I have to respond to what you all asked us to do. And what you all asked us to do was look at the opportunity to extend water and sewer services into this area. So that being said, are there other issues or there is other things that can be done within the basin to address the environmental issues, then a lot of work is being done. As a matter of fact, the Leon County, who's taking the lead on a good portion of that, has got committed about $70 million worth of investments into this area to address environmental concerns. And much of this we are working with them on. As a matter of fact, you all have approved, I believe, 4 interlocal agreements with them for them to construct sewer service and water service into these areas and for us to maintain it.
Okay, and what I'm getting at is basically, I think we all have the same goal, but I am curious to know if the primary concern is environmental, if there is anything else that would cost us less than the option that we're considering. So my understanding is the $2 million, startup cost is coming from something like reserves within the capital improvement plan. That's correct?
We have unallocated balance.
Okay, okay. And do we have a plan for where the 20 million would come from?
We haven't finalized a funding strategy for that to date. We've got a little bit of time to do that. It will take some time for us to get through the planning and design stages. We will absolutely be looking for opportunities to leverage any funding that the city has to put into it through state and federal grants. As a matter of fact, our grants managers already identified a couple of opportunities that look like good fits for this. So we will be working hard to see how much of this we can get some federal and state funding to support.
Okay. And that is information that I would love to see, to think through what reasonably could we expect in the way of funding for this. My other question is, and I understand we are the public sector. If there was money to be made here, the private sector would be doing it. So that's what we do. So I don't expect that we, in every case, will, recoup the investment we make. But these residents don't pay city taxes. And I understand there, are fees, and then ultimately they would be paying utilities, but they would not be paying city taxes. And usually, unless there is a compelling interest for city residents, we don't provide services to the county because that's their job and they don't pay for it. And I do think the environmental concern falls into that category. I certainly do. That impacts the city. So I don't know if I have a question there so much as, well, I mean, do we have an estimate of the timeline where, or the amount that we might recoup some of that? Because as far as I can tell, any fees or utility revenue, would not come close to $20 million for a very, very long time.
And as I mentioned, we have not currently pulled together all the potential funding sources, so we don't have that estimate at this time.
Okay, and do we know, and this might be a question for you, Mr. City Manager, how much the city will be obligated financially for the Welaunee Intergovernmental agreements that we've agreed to? Because I know that that is uncertain and in the future, but do we have any idea?
Commissioner, I'm not sure I understand the question. Are you talking about the canopy development?
The infrastructure commitments to the Wilani, yes, and canopy development.
If we're talking about water and sewer, so the developer will pay and install all of that. I think that's been discussed a lot, and it generally is mischaracterized. So that's a new development, greenfield development. We will enter into agreements where they will build in this case, water and sewer. They would build the water and sewer infrastructure to our specifications. We would inspect it, and then they would turn it over to us. And so we wouldn't make that investment.
Right, I guess I meant, and I should have been more specific, any maintenance costs.
Oh, we would do that. We estimate those maintenance costs at the time of the plat.
Okay.
And so we wouldn't know that at this time.
Okay. So look, all of that is just to say, and I can kind of see where this might be going. I just personally, you know, we have had a lot of time to bring this up. And I do think, as I said, we should act sooner rather than later. But this does feel very rushed to me, and without a super compelling reason for us to act today, which in some cases that is the case, you know, there's a deadline or something like that, I would feel much, much more comfortable if we had a little bit more information, not to mention, you know, an opportunity for the public to weigh in on this. This is a considerable amount of money. You know, the public has had 2 weeks, and most people are not, you know, reading every single agenda as it comes out. So for those reasons, you know, I 100% support this, but I do have some, those are my concerns, and I think they're significant enough for us to get those questions answered and before taking this kind of action and making this kind of commitment. Thank you.
Motion for staff recommendation has been made by the Mayor Pro Tem. It's seconded by Commissioner Williams-Cox. Commissioner Williams-Cox, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I would have to disagree because this work is a part of the Southside Action Plan that was renamed from the Southern Strategy that has been sitting on a shelf for 20-plus years. Mm-hmm. So this is not new. This is finally having an opportunity where there's some financing available where we can collaborate with the city and the county can collaborate to right this wrong that has been in place for so very long. Commissioner Proctor, chairman of the county commission, has been writing us, has been begging us, has been talking to us about doing this for a very long time. And so to come to this point to say that, okay, the county has some money that can be leveraged and it's an opportune time for the city because we're working on a Southside Action Plan, it sounds to me like there are several things that are converging at the same time that would be a good utilization and would be strategic to do these things. Not to mention that as we look at growing the South Side, where I too live, that we want to advance the south end of our county as well as we've been advancing things on the north end of the county. And I think that this is a great opportunity to move forward with speed because we have the opportunity to do it now. So that we can entice and include businesses to come to grow and come to the South Side, as well as residents who, and actually we received a very strong request from a business owner on the South End who has been lobbying for this for a very long time because of the nature of the work that they do. Without this infrastructure in place, they're having to do some extraordinary things in order to protect the environment on that end of the county. So I wholeheartedly want us to move forward with haste to fix this and help residents to understand that not only will this provide city service, but it goes towards other things that we're interested in doing, such as expanding or annexing parts of the South End into the city so that they will be able to participate in city elections. So they will also be able to participate in the upkeep and in the growth of the city, which we've heard from many of them. So I believe that we are moving in the right direction, and I trust that 20-plus years has been long enough to wait for this, and that we don't have to wait 20 more years for this to happen. So I'm ready to move forward with doing whatever it is that we need to do. Of course, this is not going to happen overnight, but we got to start at some point. It was written on paper 20 years ago. It's time to move this thing along. Thank you.
Commissioner Porter, then the Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you. And I just want to restate my support for this. And as I recall, we discussed annexation, and that was something this body did not want to move forward with only just a couple of months ago. I think if any of my colleagues were asking for a couple of weeks of time, this body has had 4 years to act on this. And frankly, 2 weeks before an election, I just don't think it's appropriate. I think it's appropriate to ask, if we waited 20 years, that we wait 2 more weeks to get the answers to this question. So that's not directed at you, but I think that if we've waited 20 years, then we should do this right, because it is that important.
On point, Mr. Mayor, if she's finished.
Yeah.
I don't recall a discussion on annexation. Did we have a discussion on annexation?
Yes.
Here?
We did have a brief discussion, but remember, in the state of Florida, the city does not annex neighborhoods. It is the neighborhood's responsibility to petition the city. So even if we were interested in annexing, say, all the way to the county line, we do not have that ability as a government. It would be a neighborhood that would petition the city for. Am I correct on that, Madam Attorney?
There are 2 ways to annex. It can be voluntary or involuntary, but generally the position of the city has been that we want voluntary annexation.
Okay, so we've got the Mayor Pro Tem and then Commissioner Matlow.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I tend to agree with Commissioner Williams-Cox. This hasn't been rushed. Commissioner Porter, I'm sorry that you feel that way. I've lived in this community for 50 years. I've lived on the south side of town for 30 years. And these have been issues that have been discussed for years. I have served, of course, on the Blueprint Sales Tax Committee. These were issues we discussed, infrastructure, basic infrastructure issues, particularly on the south side of Tallahassee. And when we have the opportunity to do this now, it's not rushed. We have directed staff to look into how we move forward with making this happen for citizens who live in that part of our community. And I think it's the appropriate thing to do to give that basic service. You may have received, I did, a letter from the Wakulla Springs Working Group, heavily supporting this project. And I don't think that they would think that it was being rushed because of their concerns about Lake Munson and further degradation of Wakulla Springs, if that were to happen. And so I think we're headed in the right direction. We've given staff the right direction, and I think it's time to move forward with this project.
Commissioner Matlow.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. First off, yeah, I mean, I agree on annexation. We have the ability to push forward with it and at least start the process to get the property owner's vote if we chose to. We chose not to. On the particular item, I just had one question, Mr. Schaefer. We got the letter from Wakulla Springs Alliance requesting to expand the scope for all parts of the Lake Munson unsewered target study area not covered by the 21 interlocal agreement with the county. Have we looked at costs associated with that expanded scope?
Yes, as part of our master planning process, we actually have identified estimated costs for all of the work that you're talking about in the Lake Munson Basin, and it was in the neighborhood of $120 million plus or minus. That's the number that we have in the master plan.
Okay, and that investment, do we have a long-term plan to fund that entire area?
Steve, let me, because I want to make sure you address this. Commissioner, this is on point with your question. So the county, there's a lot of the unincorporated area the county is moving forward with. Steve, if you can talk, I think it's a $70 million plan that's in motion that gets to that. If you could share kind of what's happening today. The county's initiated, obviously, we become the owner of it and operator of it. I think that's germane to this question.
Right, and I mentioned earlier that you all have approved interlocal agreements with the county, and one of those interlocal agreements is in the Lake Munson Basin for expansion of sewer into that area. And that is part of the $70 million that they're investing throughout the, we'll call it BMAP area. So this is an area that's already being looked at. As you know, that area around Lake Munson is actually completely in the unincorporated area, so the county taking the lead makes a lot of sense. But that investment, so these are happening in phases, clearly, and I expect that it'll be looked at in the future for additional opportunities.
Okay. I'm going to support the motion, Mr. Mayor. What I would ask is if we could have an item or a report brought back laying out what's excluded from the interlocal agreement with the county, plus what we're doing, just for a base level of analysis of how to take that forward in the future. The numbers thrown out, I just really want to be able to wrap my head around it.
Sure. Commissioner Porter, final comments before the vote.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just want to reiterate that I agree with everything that Commissioner Williams-Cox and the Mayor Pro Tem have said. I believe we need to move forward. I know this has been something that's been discussed for a long time, so I support that. I don't think that moving forward is what has been rushed. I just want to state that because certainly that's not how I feel. I also want to say, in closing on this issue, that if any of my colleagues here asked for a few weeks, I promise that I will give it to them. I think that's cordial. I think that's in the spirit of working together. But I will do that if that ever comes up, and I wish that that were extended right now. Thank you.
Motion on the table is for staff recommendation made by the Mayor Pro Tem, seconded by Commissioner Williams-Cox. All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? Passes unanimously, 5-0. Okay, colleagues, we have two more items that I would like to push through, and we can get them done by 6 o'clock. But will you please join me in welcoming Girl Scout Troop 118 that has joined us in Chambers. They are completing their Democracy Merit Badge. They are a first-year troop, ladies, so good to see you. Their troop leaders are Captain Danielle Davis, Sergeant Sherry Bryant, and Lieutenant Sonia Bush from the Tallahassee Police Department. It is great to have y'all, and I look forward to spending some time once we are done with our meeting. But ladies, will you stand up and take a bow, please? All right, Mr. Manager, we are on item number 12.06. Excuse me, the Inspector General. Mr. Sutton, good to see you, sir.
Thank you, Mayor, Commissioners, and fellow appointed officials. Item number 12.06 requests the Commission approval for the fiscal year 2023 annual audit plan. Best practices and, just as importantly, Commission Policy 104 require that the annual audit plan be approved by the City Commission. Just to give you all a little bit of background, in July and August, we sought input from the appointed officials, you, the City Commission, the executive team, and all of the citizen advisory boards as to possible audit topics or areas of concerns that they may have that they thought could benefit from the attention of an audit. We took that information, and the Office of the Inspector General Audit Division held a retreat out at the airport. And I'd like to extend my thank you to David Pollard for accommodating us. And we analyzed all of the responses we received, plus our own internal analysis of risks and areas that may need attention of audit, and came up with this annual audit plan. On September 15th, we took the audit plan to the city's audit committee, and they unanimously approved this audit plan for referral to you guys for final approval. A couple of things that I'd like to point out from the audit plan that I think are worth of note this year. We're proposing 3 new audits this year. The first one, I think y'all agree, is a little bit of a nerdy thing, but I think that a couple of commissioners may appreciate it, as a audit on policy. Maybe come up with a policy on policies, on how city policies are developed. Yeah, kind of nerdy, I told you, Mr. Mayor. To help ensure uniformity across the city, so that when anybody picks up a city policy, they know what to expect. And look at the substance and content of policies for consistency across, look for best practices in city policy, just to help ensure good governance across the organization. The second one that I really wanted to point out was an audit of the performance measures that are being reported to you all as part of the strategic plan. I think the city's done a great job with the 5-year strategic plan. We had initially thought about doing this right off the bat, but decided it would be best to wait a couple of years, have some data, and go back and be able to provide some assurance to you that you're receiving from management is accurate as far as those performance measures. I know that the Strategic Innovations Department does do some work verifying the accuracy of those, but it seems to be more of a reasonableness check than actually getting down in and crunching the numbers for accuracy and what's being reported. And then the final audit that I wanted to mention is we're proposing an audit of the TPD Internal Affairs Division. With the conversion from the city auditor to the Inspector General's office, we investigate complaints across the city. And some of those complaints will obviously involve TPD officers. But TPD already has their own investigative division to handle complaints regarding officers. They're specialized in that. And if the Inspector General's office is going to rely on the work of the TPD Internal Affairs Division, I feel like we should do an audit to make sure that they are doing good work. That doesn't mean that we won't do investigations of complaints against officers, but for the majority of complaints, I feel like I should be able to look at what Internal Affairs has done before me, and from an efficiency standpoint, rely on that work. And so those are 3 audits that I really would want to bring to your attention. And with that, I'm open to any questions and recommend option number 1, the approval of the 2023 audit plan.
Excellent. Thanks for that presentation. Mr. Clerk, do we have any public comments on this item?
No, sir.
All right. Commissioner Porter.
Thank you. I would move that we accept option number 1.
It's been properly moved by Commissioner Porter for option number 1, staff recommendation. Is there a second? Seconded by Mayor Pro Tem. Commissioner Porter, you are recognized for comments.
Thank you. And thank you for this report. I just have one question. So the audit reviewing the accuracy of select performance measures, is that you are going to be evaluating what we are reporting as our progress?
Yes, that would be the plan, is to take what is being reported from management to the city commission in their updates on performance against the strategic plan and the accuracy of those numbers. We're not going to consider, at least not the focus of the audit, it may expand, but the reasonableness or the appropriateness of those performance measures in relation to the audit plan. I think that that's a lot of management's responsibility. We may be able to provide some advice and recommendations in that area, but I think that what we have as a first start at the strategic plan was excellent and something that we'll be able to build on as part of our next 5-year strategic plan.
Okay, thank you, because that's exactly what I was trying to distinguish and get at. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
All right, there's a motion on the table made by Commissioner Porter for staff recommendation option number 1, seconded by the Mayor Pro Tem. Any further comment? Seeing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Passes unanimously 5-0. Thank you, Mr. Sutton. Item number 12.07, Mr. Treasurer Clerk.
Thank you, Mayor. On this item, we have some outstanding capital bonds, and we generally, by practice, when we have the opportunity to refund outstanding debt, if we can achieve a savings level of 5%, we like to do that. We put out an RFP, received a number of competitive responses, the best of which is recommended that we move forward. That's a little over 7% savings, but what that means in dollar numbers is about $260,000 a year, and just overall on these refundings, the net present value overall is about $2.6 million. So we believe it's an appropriate opportunity to reduce our debt service, and we bring the item and resolution for your approval.
Excellent. Do we have any public comment on this item?
No, sir.
All right, looking for direction, comments?
Move up. Go ahead. Hey, Mayor Pro Tem.
Move staff recommendation, option number 1.
It's been properly moved by the Mayor Pro Tem, seconded by Commissioner Williams-Cox. Any further comment? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed. Passes unanimously 5-0. Mr. Manager, do we have anything else to come before us under policy formation and direction?
No, sir.
Ladies and gentlemen, we will stand in recess for the next 15 minutes. We will be back at 6 o'clock for the regularly scheduled public hearing. Troop 118. We are back in session, 6:03. Apologize for being 3 minutes late. We do have 2 items on our public hearing tonight, but I know one I believe we're going to postpone. So, Madam Attorney, walk us through our status for the public hearing.
Thank you, Mayor. Item number 14.01 is the first of 2 public hearings for the Florida State University Campus Development Agreement. The recommended action is option 1, conduct the first public hearing on October 26, 2022 concerning the FSU Campus Development Agreement and schedule the second public hearing for December 7, 2022. This is the first of 2 public hearings on the Campus Development Agreement between Florida State University and the City of Tallahassee. Under state law, the city as the host government and FSU must enter into a campus development agreement to implement the university's campus master plan. All universities in Florida are required to prepare campus master plans and update those plans every 5 years. State law further requires that each university enter into a campus development agreement with the local host government for the implementation of the campus master plan. The existing FSU campus development agreement is scheduled to expire on December 31st, 2022. The updated FSU master plan covers the 2020 to 2030 planning period. Senior Assistant Attorney Lou Norvell and Assistant Growth Management Director Keith Burnstead are available to answer any questions.
Thank you. Do we have any public comment on this item?
Mayor, I have not received any speaker cards, and I don't see anyone here who's indicating they wish to speak.
All right, let's move for direction. Colleagues?
Move option 1.
Okay, it's been properly moved for option number 1 by Commissioner Williams-Cox. Is there a second? Seconded by Commissioner Matlow. Any further comment? Seeing none. All those in favor of the motion on the table signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Passes unanimously. Commissioner Porter, I believe they were asking for you outside. Did you get a chance to see? Okay, excellent, excellent. Okay, walk us through 1402. Where are we?
Thank you, Mayor. Item number 14.02 is a public hearing on ordinance number 22-0-29, an ordinance of the City of Tallahassee, Florida, amending section 14-3.310 and 14-3.410 of the Tallahassee Code of General Ordinances of the City of Tallahassee relating to the police employees' pension provisions, providing for conflict, providing for severability, and providing an effective date. This ordinance was introduced on October 12, 2022, and it was announced the first and only public hearing would be this evening, October 26, 2022. Due to a procedural issue, the ordinance was not advertised as required by Florida statutes. Therefore, the recommended action is to set the first and only public hearing for December 7, 2022, but to permit any speakers on this item to comment this evening if speakers are present.
All right, colleagues, we had a procedural mishap. No big deal. We're just going to push it back to the 7th, but is there anybody here, Mr. Cook, who speak on this item?
I have no speakers on this item and see none.
Okay, so any questions on why we need to push back to the 7th? Okay, great. Do we have anything else before us on the public hearing?
Just to make the motion and approve the December 7th public.
Oh, excuse me, of course. Properly moved by Commissioner Williams-Cox, seconded by the Mayor Pro Tem. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Passes unanimously 5-0. We are on unagended speakers. Mr. Clerk.
Mayor, I have no unagended speakers.
Sharing of ideas. Mr. Mayor Pro Tem. Commissioner Matlow.
Have a good night.
Commissioner Williams-Cox.
Happy homecoming.
Commissioner Porter.
Happy homecoming.
Man, we have set a record here. Ladies and gentlemen, have a great evening. Happy homecoming, 6:07, and we started 3 minutes late.